Chapter 534 Attack on Thalmor. Hi guys. So Pater 0N has started following a new sales taxation protocol on pledges, which got me concerned, and I went through that long page of terms and policies, too damn long, and thankfully we are mostly safe from this situation. For those of you who live outside Europe and the United States, this doesn't concern you at all, mostly. As for those who live in Europe and the US, the taxation is only limited to streaming content, downloadable and physical good. In our case, we only work with support, recognition and exclusive community access, so all of you guys are exempted from taxation. To be safe, check out your national or state law to avoid misunderstanding. Also, we give thanks and recognitions to our new fabulous, absolutely wonderful new patrons. At Nukadova, C rank. At Joshua Hammonds, C rank. At Smashing Flyer, D rank. At Max, C rank. Side quests were fun. Slowly but carefully, and on the span of 2 days, John started finishing most of these side quests that he could remember. It gave him a great nostalgia and an incredible insight on how his actions and decisions can affect everything around him. He even got himself involved in the feud between the Greymane clan and the Battleborn clan. Even though John Battleborn and Alfina Greymane were already married, the political feud from the game happened nonetheless, but it was way less intense. Unlike the game, when the Battleborns were taking an indifferent attitude towards the situation of Thorold Greymane, who was captured by the Thalmor, this time they were actually a bit open with the Greymanes and told them some details, that their son was captured somewhere in Solitude to force the Greymanes to switch sides, as it seemed that they have contacted General Tullius for the release of Thorold, but they didn't say anything regarding the Thalmor. Even though the feud was much lighter than what happened in the game, a feud is still a feud, and the ones who were harmed the most by it in the game were also the same ones who were harmed by it now, John Battleborn and Alfina Greymane. After John's return to Skyrim, John Dare and John Battleborn met after the subjugation of the first dragon, Mermulner. John Battleborn is one of the few people who knew the true identity of the Dragonborn as a personal friend to John Dare and a company executive. When he heard that the Dragonborn offered help with Thorold's situation, he was the first to don his armor and carry his sword for the cause. Just as that happened, a Volstein Greymane was also carrying his Dane axe and wearing his armor to free his brother from captivity. Of course, John revealed that Thorold was captured by the Thalmor, and the only way to get him out is through. Knowing the Thalmor, some powerful mages must be present in a Thalmor stronghold, and the fight won't be easy. Thus John insisted on herding some Talos cultists as mercenaries, and a small warband was formed in a cave north to Whiterun after clearing it from bandits. The number reached 50 combatants of the strongest fighters from various backgrounds. All of them were aura masters from different age groups who came together to save the people that were imprisoned by the Thalmor in Northwatch Keep. As the men were put together and recognized the Dragonborn as the youth who wears the horned helm, John instructed them to go north on horseback towards the Pale and raid the pirate camps hidden in that area to take their longboats. In the span of 1 week, the group managed to reach their designated location and created a big scene by eliminating 3 pirate camps in 2 nights. With 50 hardy Nords and 3 longboats in good conditions, John led them into the sea, traveling west-north to Jalmarch and Solitude. Along the way, the warband of the Dragonborn made a name for itself by destroying every pirate ship in its way all the way to the shores of Solitude. There, the Imperial fleet met them and tried to force them back, but with the identity of the Dragonborn and the fame of the warband, the Nord officers of the Imperial fleet showed reluctance towards their commands, which by its part led to the fleet commander appeasing the tension by letting the 50 Northmen pass. What can go wrong with letting 50 warriors led by a Dragonborn pass anyway? Either way, the warband made another accomplishment by successfully getting rid of the dangerous pirates that were lurking around the mouth of the Karth River under Solitude, who were led by the Argonian siblings Jariare and Dija. Following such an achievement, the 50 men landed in Solitude's docks and loaded up for more raids against the pirates. The clans of Solitude tried to invite in the Dragonborn, but the ships left as soon as they landed. Until now, 1 week has passed since they moved from the Pale. John was sure of how those 50 men can fight and how he should employ them in the next battle. During the next 2 days, the band landed not too far from Northwatch Keep, which was used by the Thalmor as a prison, and made contact with a nearby fishing village to announce their presence. Meanwhile, John and Nefertiti went towards the keep to scout it from the shadows and figure out a plan. It all went well and John found a total of 7 Thalmor High Mages. These were the ones in charge of the whole scene. With this information, John returned to the village to openly make a ritual dedicated to Talos and ordered a man from the warband to disguise himself as a villager and tip off the Thalmor in the fort about them. Without a single suspicion, these Thalmor sent a justiciar along with 10 Dominion soldiers to arrest the man who openly conducted a ritual and led him back into the fort. This whole thing was staged from the beginning, and as soon as the arrest happened and the man was taken, John and the rest of the warband showed up in the village and asked for their friend just to make a proper excuse for what follows. And what followed was carnage. The Dragonborn and the warband of 49 warriors raided Northwatch Keep at night. As soon as the Thalmor were alarmed of the raid, John had already infiltrated the fort and hid in the darkness. Homan, 160 feet north on the wall. I see him. With the torches of the warband being thrown around the fort to start a fire at anything burnable, John was inside assassinating the High Mages with Maroon's razor. He marked the dagger, flipped the old man's coin, then threw the dagger with all his might at the mage 50 meters away. Instant kill. John teleported near the dagger using his mark, took it out and attacked anyone nearby before jumping off the fort's wall and running away. Assassin! Catch him! There was no way he would be caught in his current momentum. He had a warband distracting the Thalmor outside and killed everyone in his way. The reason why he had to do such a thing instead of venturing alone into the fort and killing everyone was to make fame for himself aside from being just a Dragonborn. His abilities are clearly that of a warrior rather than a mage, which is something to the liking of all Nords, and his talent in leading raids is as legendary as Ysgramor himself. He wanted the Nords to associate the number 50 with the 500 companions of Ysgramor, so that his popularity increased further. The other reason he did such a move was to prevent the Thalmor from using hostages against him. It would be very troublesome if he found a blade pointed at the neck of a helpless prisoner and he can't do anything about it. With the mages dispatched and the prisoners located, John went inside the fort's dungeon and broke the man who was imprisoned free. You all right, John? I am, John. Then take your sword and shield and don't let any Thalmor near those prisoners, John. Thanks, John. Leave some weapons for those men locked over there. We will defend this place together. Good, John. Here you go. We will break the gates now. Good luck, John. To you too, John. John and John parted ways in the dungeon as Battleborn remained to secure the prisoners and Dare went to join the attacks. Outside the keep, the situation was extremely chaotic as the Dominion soldiers were mobilizing the defense equipment from the front of the keep to its back, where enemies are not supposed to attack. The warband chose to attack from the back despite the walls being higher and thicker to force the Dominion soldiers to move the arrows and shields all the way to the back, but when they finally got the signal from John, the warband retreated and circled around the fort to attack from the front. This caused the Dominion soldiers to move all their equipment once again. This time, however, the warband was not just shooting arrows and hiding behind trees and shields, they were forming a particular shield formation that resembled a battering ram as they marched towards the gate. There was no way this formation would work. What they were trying to accomplish is by no means possible unless they have a high mage themselves or the assassin inside the fort shows himself and breaks the gate open. The truth which faced the Thalmor was different. Once the shield formation reached the gate under the constant arrow and spell attacks, A dangerous presence was felt at the gate, and those who were above the gatehouse lost their consciousness. Fuss aro da! The gates were blown away, and the Dominion soldiers' defense formation behind them crumbled with the two massive blanks of wood flying at them, turning anyone in their way into meat paste. It was then when the raid truly began. Charge! John shouted a battle cry, and the axemen flowed in like water. The fort's yard was overtaken, and the walls were being cleaned from any elves almost instantly. The rear of the fort showed some resistance as the Dominion soldiers managed to cause some damage to the Nords, but a Wulfstein Greymane served his Dane axe the necks of those elves. John even sent out Nefertiti to kill any elf that seemed like a threat. Inside the keep, the fight started as John Battleborn secured the dungeon against the elves who tried to use the prisoners as hostages. He had a band of prisoners with him that assisted him in the ambush. As the fight outside was nearly done, the back door of the dungeon was opened and the warband flowed through. From the main gate, John shouted once again and broke in all by himself, cutting the elves to shreds with a greatsword. As he walked the hallway of the keep, the doors opened from left and right as the Nords were killing and pillaging. They even had some Dominion soldiers tied up and dragged out of the fort as prisoners. John finally reached the torture room where he expected to find Thorold Greymane. Kicking it open, he easily expected an ambush that he withstood by a shield as he pushed against the 10 or so elves before he swung the greatsword with one hand to kill them all. John Battleborn and a Wulfstein Greymane followed him in as they stormed the last room where Thorold Greymane was chained to a wall. Thorold! A Wulfstein! What in oblivion? How are you here? I thought there was a war outside? There is a war outside. Wah! Come, let's get you out. John Battleborn and a Wulfstein unchained Thorold and helped him walk out as the warband was finishing up things. Elf prisoners were taken and the important documents were secured. As the prisoners were made to kneel in the keep's hall, a round of beating and kicking started, especially from the ones who were imprisoned in the fort. John simply distanced himself from the noise and skimmed through the documents while mumbling. Slave trading, human experiments, sexual assaults, mass murder, assassination orders, espionage. If these documents land in the hands of Ulfric, the Empire is totally fucked if they covered for this knowingly, John said as he kept those papers in the cube. Rumors can travel all they want, but hard evidence would make a very disturbing stance if the Nord nobles were to react to this. Of course, the Empire is mostly unaware of what happens in Thalmor prisons, and those who are aware would be traitors. The White Gold Concordat gives the right to hunt down the cults of Talos, not to commit racial crimes, but simply speaking, the Empire wouldn't be able to deny its knowledge, and even its citizens would lose faith in its credibility. By tracking down those leads and legitimizing them, John would have the Empire itself by the balls. Nefertiti, on the way back, would you please drop by our Imperial friends and leave them this gift? John ripped off a page from a document and gave it to Nefertiti. She appeared from his shadow and turned into her human form, then took the paper and tried to read it, but to no avail. Human scratchings make me dizzy. Good luck, oh. And stick around the Imperials for a while. Tell me what face General Tullius makes when he sees it. John said as he returned back to the warband. It was a dark face, very dark even by Redguard's standards. General Tullius was having the worst month of his life. People have a midlife crisis, and he was having midlife disaster. Not only did he lose Ulfric Stormcloak in Helgen, but he ended up causing Winterhold to switch from the neutral stance to the Stormcloak faction. Yet now, as the month was finally going to pass, he received news of a Nordic warband led by the rumored Dragonborn acting heroically and clearing up pirates, which was a good thing, until the damn Thalmor decided to arrest a member of the warband. All hell broke loose a few nights ago when the warband led by the Dragonborn raided Northwatch Keep and pillaged every last scrap in the place, freeing all Nord prisoners and taking elf prisoners for themselves. The warband then hurried back to Dawnstar and handed the elves over to Jarl Skald the Elder, who rewarded them with gold. On the other hand, military legate Rika informed him of a note delivered to her by a little girl. This note was a ripped page from a Dominion report that contained details about some Imperial officers receiving bribes from the Dominion to overlook their ruthless activities. This was a scandal from a whole new level, and it would harm the Empire in one go if left unchecked. The general ordered to bring out those officers and put them on secret trial, then execute them swiftly and report them as missing in action. So, this Dragonborn, he is going to be another pain in the ass, isn't he? The general asked. Legate Rika refrained from answering and focused on the report. Here is what we know from Legate Julia's visit to Winterhold. The Dragonborn was there during Helgen. He is the man who was about to get executed when the dragon attacked. He used to work for John Dare during his stay in Cyrodiil. The cult of Ancestor Moth dictates that if this man is truly a Dragonborn, then there are incredible changes that will happen to the world. Seeing the dragons and the situation with the Thalmor we are in those times, General, Legate Rika said. General Tullius felt his skin crawling with the mention of dragons, but he kept his act together. I don't need cults and prophecies to win me the war, Legate. I need reliable information, he said as he slammed the table in frustration. The Elder Council has kept the identity of John Dare as Krylin from us until that disaster happened. Had I known he is of importance to the Emperor, things would have gone differently. Now I have to worry about John Dare and his Dragonborn running wild to solidify their stance. Seeing his frustrated face, Legate Rika kept her cool. Well, the East Empire Company advised us not to cause a situation with him. Are you suggesting that I should have listened to those gold diggers merchants? Jarl Elizef also advised us to keep a friendly relationship with Winterhold, and I had the same opinion. Well, congratulations. All of you are right and I am the fool in this party. General Tullius tossed a mead bottle across the room in a fit of anger. After a minute of taking some breath, to let the negative thoughts out, General Tullius turned back once again and took a seat reviewing the reports in front of him. They were all accurate and well-detailed reports. Even the corruption investigation proved to be thoroughly accurate, the thing that almost frustrated him all over again. Still, in these reports he could read a certain name that wasn't actually written. In the past month, General Tullius developed the sense of sniffing out John Dare's presence in those reports. The changes of Winterhold, the relationship between John Dare and Vittoria Vici, the Bard's College espionage activities, the warband of the Dragonborn, the dragon attacks. John Dare had either a direct or indirect fingerprint on each and every report here. It is as his name was written between every word in those damn papers. Oblivion. If we are living in a novel about this John Dare, he wouldn't be this much, right? He said and looked at Legate Rika. She followed the report with her eyes and made a helpless face. What will we do in this case? He knows too much, Legate Rika said. General Tullius looked at her trying to find an answer in her face, but she was as helpless as he is. He then simply raised his shoulders and replied, "Let's not bother with him. We'll have to cross his path in the future, so let's keep things quiet for now. Maybe we can win something next time." The general calmly decided to leave the matters with Winterhold alone. He may not like to admit it, but he was rash when dealing with John Dare. John's return was very timely with the late chaos, which put a lot of strain on the mind of General Tullius, especially with the late sightings of the dragons. Dragons, those creatures left a terrifying mark on the general, who always thought he had seen it all. If a Dragonborn is what it takes to kill a Dragonborn, then the Dragonborn it is. He won't stand in his way. But he can't lose ground like that. The general finally felt some inspiration after 1 month of constant failure. If he can make an alliance with the Dragonborn, he can slip through the brash Nordic politics without and solidify the stance of the Empire. Still, the Thalmor are a hateful bunch who will stand in his way. If that's the case, then there is a certain John Dare who has a kink of murdering Thalmor. He can always hit the Thalmor with that rock. They have truly offended the general and the Nords this time. It will also be a good opportunity to clear the Empire's responsibility from the scandal. Still, the Dragonborn comes first. What would a Dragonborn need? Legate, ask the Penitus Oculatus to compile a file on the Dragonborn, and check out any treasure we can get the Empire to send us? General Tullius had a devious idea to get close to the Dragonborn. He may be a military man, but he is still a sly Imperial like the rest of his kind. He smiled faintly as he felt his appetite finally better than the past few days. There was that thing with dried fish and wine somewhere around that table next to the wall. He could find the wine but no trace of the fish. Strange. Did Rika eat the fish? Chapter 535, A New Hand TOUC Mute. Hello guys. I have a small announcement. Some time ago, I joined a Skyrim mod project called Mysterious Akavir, and from its name, you'd know where it is going. Eke fucking Vir. We are creating a small-scale island first called Ineslia as a part of the 3 Dragon Isles between Tamriel and Akavir to assess ourselves and how much we can achieve, but we lack willing manpower. If any of you has time and skill, we'd require you to submit a proof of your skill on Discord's server, so don't feel shy and DM me directly so I'll link you with the project lead. We need mostly everything from 2D, 3D level designers, composers, etc. Our unique ideas include martial arts spells, wuxia-inspired, lore makeover, Eastern fantasy inspiration, and more edgy stuff. Stay tuned or help out if you can. Discord. GG/GKCKVA7. The actions of the Dragonborn leading a warband against the Thalmor had a far-reaching effect than what any can imagine. It was a sign to the warring humans that the true enemy they should be pointing their blades at is the viper lurking in the shadows, sowing discord among brothers and friends. As the prisoners from Northwatch Keep returned to their families, the Dragonborn was celebrated with many songs and poems describing his voice-wielding power or the ancient Nord heart. Such a tale took 3 days to spread around Skyrim like wildfire, making the reputation of the Dragonborn something to behold. John didn't feel wiser than the moment when he decided to hide his identity that day. Either way, the political reaction to the raid on Northwatch Keep varied from the Jarls to the Empire to the Thalmor to everyone else. The Jarls mostly supported the Dragonborn openly in the east and moderately in the west. Those who returned to their families were advised to keep their heads down and escape to a Stormcloak territory before anything unpleasant happened, and so a scene of cooperation between the warring sides happened amidst this darkness. The Empire took its usual passive stance to avoid the drama that follows, but it was rumored that General Tullius has kicked out the Thalmor messenger after acting out of manners. The official stance regarding the raid was simply mere words, saying that the Dragonborn should have known better than starting a conflict, and the Empire advises him to seek legal means rather than taking the law into his own hands. On the other hand, the Thalmor were rather on edge. The Dragonborn is surely closely associated with John Dare, who is their #1 public enemy. It is without a doubt that John Dare acted behind the scenes in this raid, if not funded or participated in it himself. The trap was surely obvious, since no Nord would openly worship Talos near a Thalmor prison, but the nerve of those Nords was really something to not only kill the Thalmor agents and guards but also take prisoners and hand them over to the Stormcloaks. That's right, the Thalmor agents who survived the raid were taken as prisoners and sold to Ulfric Stormcloak at the docks of Windhelm openly like slaves. This particular scene reminded many of the stories of the construction of Windhelm, when Iskramor and the 500 companions raided the elves and took them as slaves to build the great city of Windhelm. Nothing made Ulfric Stormcloak feel more pride than buying those Thalmor and throwing them in his dungeon. Either way, the reaction of the Thalmor was sending a missive to each Jarl announcing the will of the Thalmor to arrest the 50 members of the warband that raided their prison and the immediate return of their prisoners and their agents, the act that infuriated most of the Jarl. All of them replied that they have no knowledge of what the Thalmor are talking about. As for the Dragonborn, The Thalmor didn't really acknowledge him or his title publicly, which wasn't that unusual. The dragon blood was the basis which built the three empires of men which they envied. In their pantheon, Auriel, who is also Akatosh, wouldn't give the men such a blessing if not for the manipulation of the time aspects which Saint Alessia and her Alessian sect did. The old Alessian sect was the first force that discriminated against elves publicly across Tamriel, and is also the force that caused the septation of the two aspects of time, Auriel and Akatosh. As extremists, the Thalmor would even see the dragon blood in a human veins as a mock of their divine right of Auriel, and if they had the power, they would have annihilated such blood. Either way, the Dragonborn is officially another enemy they can't do anything about, as he is the only method that may end this dragon crisis that they know nothing about. All this and that made Skyrim feel like a boiling pot of issues which may explode any second, with the Nords feeling the excitement for the Dragonborn is with them, and the Empire staying on edge for any new unanticipated action he may take. After all, the wheel turns on the Dragonborn. It was strange how this phrase made more sense each time he took an action. The wheel is a metaphor meaning either the orbis or the fate. Either way, it is as if the whole world is now revolving around John. "Are there more reports I need to worry about?" John asked as he packed some books into a knapsack and tossed it to Lydia across the room. "There are no reports that may interest you in particular, but it seemed that the Thalmor has made a few official complaints against our dearest Dragonborn. They describe the attack as cowardly, and the rebels who committed such an act are nothing but rebellious heretics," Alina said. "Empty words," John replied. "When Ulfric offered to exchange the elves for the Nord prisoners they still have, the Thalmor said that the Aldmeri Dominion government does not negotiate with heretics. A bit heartless, I would think," Alina said. "Of course they wouldn't. If they agreed to the exchange, then once they arrest any Talos worshippers, the Nords would round up any Thalmor nearby and exchange them with prisoners," John explained. "I see. To be honest, I was thinking of it too." Alina made an understanding face. "Anyway, dear wife, I'll be heading out for a small journey up the 7,000 step. Yes, finally. I'll leave Winterhold to you then. Take care." "Yes, husband. Deliver our respect to the Honorable Greybeards." "Yep, I'll do so. Don't forget to mention that, and that, and that." Alina kept talking fervently about the history of the Greybeards and how John should behave in their presence. "Wife, I wouldn't mind it if you have some idols, but don't go fangirling on a bunch of old dudes. It's gross. Who is your favorite politician once again? An 800 years old Dunmare grandma, right?" "Forget I said anything." John and Alina kissed before he went out of his house to run into the rest of his gang. Due to a prior arrangement, they were to band together with Jonrad and anyone strong enough to face any dragon attack that may threaten Skyrim during John's journey to High Hrothgar. With all said and done, John left his burden to them as he took his portal to Riften with Lydia, and from there, he traveled west to Ivarstead on a flying flame hawk Atronach. Lydia became well accustomed to John's high functionality and manipulative nature, or so Alina made sure Lydia to be. Strange enough, Lydia proved to be one of the most level-headed people John ever met, as if she had some sort of resistance to his negative effect. She would remark sarcastically and stare at him coldly from time to time, but she was always silent and enduring, ready to carry his burdens. John would later learn that Alina put Lydia under a loyalty test so she can never be swayed by John. It was as if Alina carved John as off-limits on Lydia's brain. Either way, the journey was relatively peaceful save for that time when John wanted to sneak into the Redwater Den to acquire any information about the Fokihar clan. The Redwater Den is a drug den hidden beneath a dilapidated shack that deals in Redwater skooma, a very potent and powerful type of skooma that is made with blood refined in a blood spring deep in the den. John sensed so many vampires from various power levels fortifying the damn place like a Dwemer vault. Even teleporting inside was impossible from all the magic imbued in the place. However, John managed to let his astral projection walk through the walls and eavesdropped on some conversation inside the den. Not much important was said, but there was surely a mention of two about the Folkihar castle. Word is that the vampires were to gather their forces in the next 4 months, which meant something is definitely happening. No more good information could be found, but John started writing down some pieces of paper on how the vampires make their skooma and possible methods to cure its addiction or perhaps destroy the surplus inside the den. John is not sure of his alchemy skill, but he can always ask Master Nurelian or Julliner for advice. The journey kept on for less than a day until he reached Ivarstead. Around 4 to 5 years ago, John visited this place and killed the innkeeper who would one day kill an acquaintance of his. Thankfully, the acquaintance lived till this day and the innkeeper was different. Even though, John still snooped around the inn in order to find something, and thankfully it was in the possession of the innkeeper. It was the sapphire claw, much like the golden claw, which blesses its surroundings with good fortune. This claw seemed to have wider magic, yet with a different effect. John could feel it quite easily now. John followed the traditional route to acquire this claw as well. Ivarstead village was haunted by a ghost that dwells in Shroud Hearth Barrow nearby. In actuality, it was nothing more than an elf alchemist who was turned mad by this barrow and the supposed riches inside it. John agreed to do some exorcism after talking to the innkeeper and delved into the old ruin with Lydia and Nefertiti. Killing the elf was a piece of cake, but John didn't take that direction. He rather captured the elf instead. He was a dark elf and former bandit. From what John could tell, the man went absolute cuckoo. The Nordic ruins which once belonged to the dragon cult are mysterious and have a lot of traps that are either physical or mental. The elf who spent a year in this place now became some sort of a guardian to the barrow, as both his greed and the place played tricks on his fragile mind. This man even came up with a potion that made his skin give off a bluish glow like a ghost in order to trick the people that the barrow is haunted. John dispatched the elf after taking away the recipe to the phantom potion, and returned to the innkeeper to report his success. The reward of this was the sapphire claw, which the foolish dark elf spent a whole year looking for it. John then returned to the barrow, used the sapphire claw to unlock the Hall of Stories to the deepest part of the barrow, and hoarded all the historical pieces of value like the old pottery and the stone steels depicting events from the First Era. After all, it belongs in a museum, his museum. John and Lydia ventured deeper into the barrow as Nefertiti was revealing the traps and John was studying everything he found and discussing it with the uninterested Lydia. The most interesting part was the sapphire claw, in fact. It gave off a strange aura and John went around it too much to understand how it works, but it still felt strange. After a few hours of delving deeper and unearthing other relics, John found new ideas on how the dragon cult crafted their artifacts and deciphered the magic of the sapphire claw. The sapphire claw. Blessing of vigilance. The sapphire claw proved to be as valuable as the golden claw in some regards. It was blessed to reveal the malicious intentions in certain areas, making it invaluable when it comes to detecting spies and secret enemies. If John walked around Winterhold with such a thing on him, he may be able to root out every single spy in his territory. Either way, this invaluable item was kept in the cube as John searched deeper in the barrow. Eventually, John clashed with the old Draugrs and defeated them in a tough fight until he finally reached the treasure room of the barrow where a word wall was carved. Here fell shield maiden Valkyries who fought with courage, but was wrong to trust her the power of a borrowed sword. John read the word wall and received a revelation on the word ov, which means trust. What was left now was John's favorite part, the treasures. He started rummaging around until he took out some ancient coins, a few weapons from the First Era, worn-out books, old magic items and lastly, a strangely large white gem. The white gem was almost at the size of a soccer ball and was all white with a mystic luster. John didn't mean to touch it at first, but the moment he mindlessly did, He fell on the ground and started shouting as he held his head. A new hand touches the beacon. Listen. Stop. Hear me and obey. A foul darkness has seeped into my temple. A darkness that you will destroy. Turn down the volume. Return my beacon to Mount Kilcreath, and I will make you the instrument of my cleansing light. *huff fuck. Chapter 536 High Hrothgar. Big thanks to our new patrons. At LRD Bonds, C rank. At Bruno Rubens Fernandez Kleiman, D rank. At Coiler McCoy, D rank. 7,000 steps, huh? That sure went fast. John exclaimed, then looked behind him to see Lydia, who was out of breath and barely keeping up. It was probably due to the air being thinner and the drop of the oxygen density the higher one goes. For normal people, exerting effort at such height is torturous, especially when one's lungs hurt so damn much. The mind would start going numb after doing something exhausting, and the efficiency of any person would go down a few notches. To voice masters, on the other hand, such a problem is easily solvable. Breathing techniques and managing the inner body may seem like fantasy methods to normal people, but if someone can find the capacity to breathe in the void and the chaos, one is already out of the normal people's realm. Energy breathing is simply a secret which may seem like a very complicated method at first, but it is manageable with good enough understanding. Breathing through the skin is certainly the answer here, since the skin can efficiently take what it needs and dispel what it doesn't. The body knows itself best after all. In the case of John and Lydia, it was a normal thing to happen. Even though John instructed her many times along the way, telling someone to breathe through their ears still sounds more manageable than breathing through the skin. Still, reaching the monastery was the ultimate goal of the journey, and the monastery they reached. John casually walking, Lydia begging for breath, and Nefertiti snuggling on John's shoulder. The three had all different emotions when they finally were about to step in High Hrothgar Monastery. But before going in, John had to drop the supplies Klimek entrusted him to deliver. Yep, another side quest. The sunlight was fading away with an array of whirling mists covering the peak of the throat of the world and enshrouding it with mystery. It also thickened gloomier with John approaching the High Hrothgar Monastery step by step, as if it was heralding his most anticipated presence. A month since he was summoned, and a month took him to come, rude to the greybeards but necessary to the greater good. John would apologize for that if needed, but he would soon find an alternate story. An alternate story that took him from the beginning as he was about to touch the right side gate of the monastery. Wondrously, the gate opened itself, and from deep within the dark stone corridor came a young man in black robes and shaved head, a bit older than John and a tad shorter, but unleashed a strong presence that would pressure anyone with a weak heart. On the other hand, John returned double the presence with a provocative sneer. The young man was taken by utter surprise and acknowledged John with wide eyes. "A Dragonborn indeed," he said in wonder. "Expecting me?" John asked. The young man nodded. "Indeed, you were singing that terrible song on your way up. That's when I heard you. Though, the masters must have heard you way before I did," the young man said. It was John's time to be taken aback. He knew that the monks who live in this monastery were the strongest NPCs in the game, but not to hear him from, "Oh, wait." He now understood how they knew he killed a dragon near Whiterun from this high up the mountain. Super hearing? That's new. "Oh, where are my manners?" "This way," the young man said as he cleared the way for John and Lydia to walk in. Nefertiti nimbly jumped off John's shoulder and ran into the hall, as if something had caught her attention. No one would mind a cat's behavior normally, but a cat that made it to High Hrothgar is no ordinary cat. "Eager to play already?" The young man laughed. The world is literally the playground of cats. No one can deny that. John spoke as if it is the most obvious thing in the world. "Oh, I agree. The man nodded while stroking his short beard. "I see you are a man of culture as well." John immediately took a liking on this man. Indeed, there is nothing as graceful as a cat. Goodness me! Who are you? Canute Adept. Dare John. Feels like I have heard that name somewhere before. Adept Canute said. It goes around. John dismissed the matter nonchalantly. It is rare to find a fellow brother in fluff in this harsh part of the world, yet both John and Canute were assessing one another as if two old strategists meeting for battle negotiations. John hated rivalry in any sort of manner other than in some trivial things, but when it comes to the Thursdayum, John can become very cranky and would judge others extremely harshly. He is a Dragonborn who has the inborn privilege of shouting like a dragon, and on top of that, he put a great effort to start using the Thursdayum way before he awakens as Dragonborn. He understands the limits and the privileges he has, but deep down, shouting the Thursdayum is a birthright to him that he values dearly. An attempt to assess him in his own field of expertise hardly ends well. That made the whole journey to High Hrothgar more interesting, in fact. He may be a natural voice master and a prideful Dragonborn, but he still believed that there is always a height beyond what he knows, and the Greybeards may have accumulated knowledge that would add to his arsenal. For example, they have some good ears, as it seemed. Canute led John through the dark corridor to a hall that was built all in black stone and minimally decorated. The hall occupied the heart of the monastery, and there where John could see Nefertiti finding a place for herself near a fire brazier on a stone platform, for elderly men in grand black robes were curiously watching the strange creature that slipped swiftly through their senses. Seeing John and John seeing them, the focus was diverted on each other as Canute excused himself and whispered for Lydia to follow him away from the masters. The Greybeards, the most ancient and most honored sect in Skyrim made of monks who reside at the ancient monastery of High Hrothgar near the summit of the throat of the world. They are the most famous of the tongues, masters of the voice. They live in absolute silence in order to better attune themselves to the voice of the sky. They are a peaceful order, not using their Thursdayum to augment their martial skills, but to worship and honor the heaven as the way of the voice decreed. When the Greybeards speak, storms brew above High Hrothgar, and people are forced to evacuate due to the imminent danger of avalanches. When they even so much as speak the word Dovahkian, it rumbles through the world and the mountains shake. Such is their power when they spoke to announce the greatness of Tiber Septim. With John facing the four masters of High Hrothgar for the first time in his life, they assessed him from head to toe as their speaker approached him. So, a Dragonborn appears at this moment in the turning of the age. The man who spoke was Master Arngeir. His size was quite short for a Nord, but his presence was something else entirely. It is as if the man was not speaking but rather a force of nature barely trying to hold itself back. John couldn't help but smile vividly against such power, but he knew it is unwise to show disrespect in front of Skyrim's most respected. I, John Hild of Clan Firemane, known as John Dare, have come to answer the summons of the Greybeards. He spoke for the first time to them without restricting his voice's abilities, either. Arngeir looked at John with a hint of curiosity, as John's voice wasn't ordinary either. It had a lot of raw power just like a stream, but John had an excellent ability to hold himself back that was naturally born within him as Dragonborn. Even Master Arngeir had been through thick and thin to reach such a point of restriction. Ah, there is the gift. Kine has blessed your tongue indeed. Tell me, how long have you been using the voice? Arngeir said. 6 years, but I practiced for 2 years before it and learned the Dovahzul at an early age, John said. Angrier and the rest of the Greybeards showed concerned faces. Didn't you know that practicing the voice at such a tender age may have costed you your voice or even your life? Arngeir asked. I have known of my ability to shout since the beginning. That you are a Dragonborn? Yes. So, Dragonborns know what they are. That was not recorded before, Arngeir wondered. Our predecessors never recorded that Tiber Septim knew before he was called. and Riman never knew until he shouted the savages of Akavir at the Pale Pass. John smiled at the remarks. Just a prophecy of a moss priest, he said. Arngeir looked deeply into John and remembered something. Firemane, could it be that you are the child who caused the chaos between the clans 19 years ago? I can take the blame for many things in this world, and a few other worlds, but not really when I was but a year old. John smiled wryly. Oh, indeed. Arngeir nodded with a light smile, but the child is truly you. It was unwise to stand in the way of fate. We let a disciple down that day, and he shouted those Nords to their senses. Skyrim was loud then as it is loud today. John heard those words and contemplated on them, seeking to know what the Greybeards truly are and gaze at the depth of their ways. A few words reveal what men are, and for those Greybeards who rarely say anything, this was a historical moment worthy of studying. John was way above curious when it came to those people. So listening and speaking are two different ways? John asked. Arngeir stroked his beard and nodded. Obviously. You just listened, maybe a little. But if you truly listen, you won't need to speak. Those who say that if speaking is of silver then listening is of gold, may have underestimated the wisdom, they spoke else, they have not spoken, and kept listening. Arngeir chuckled lightly, and the other three masters showed slight smiles. John barely understood that this was a grandpa joke, only they found funny somehow. He had to try and listen to it, but it would be anticlimactic in such a moment. Can I learn how to listen? John asked. But we invited you to teach you how to speak, Arngeir replied. Anyone can speak, even my cat. Anyone can listen, even you can. Then how to listen? It is not a question that can be answered by speaking, even though if I spoke the answer. I see. John nodded as he just learned something valuable beyond anything he knew of the voice. To listen is not to speak. It is truly basic. Arngeir refused to say it but gave John an obvious hint. Still, what happens when listening? Listening and speaking are two ways of the Thursdayum. They are not clearly the same thing, but they complete and complement each other if followed right. The Thursdayum is a tonal magic. Each word said is that of the language of the dragons, but this language transcends even the dragons, for it may be attributed to them, but it is not actually theirs. The language is the language of the sky. Dragons are the dwellers of the sky, thus it can be their native language, one way or the other. This opens the door for many methods of understanding and seeing a lot of wisdom, a wisdom that even the dragons do not possess. Such a height. John thought he may learn something new, but to find that he was but a frog in a well with all those heroics under his belt, he was nearly about to burst out laughing if not for the wariness of showing disrespect. You have learned something. Does it satisfy you? Arngeir asked. If I begged to learn more, would you teach me? John asked back. I'd take your answer as a no then. Still, I have taught you all I can. Arngeir said. Indeed. I guess I would understand less if I know more. Arngeir's face brightened up for John's last remark. Many can reach the level of this understanding, but a few can think such as that. People always ask to know more, but do they truly listen? Of course they can't be blamed if they don't properly listen, as not all who talk can properly speak. In each sentence spoken, a listener must learn. Then what if the sky itself speak? It is hard to listen to the sky properly, so one must learn how to listen in a new way. The Greybeards live on a high mountain, not for the reason to be closer to the gods or the sky as some may claim, but the actual reason is to stay away from the noises of the world. They are peaceful men who do not wish to be disturbed unless in the times of great need, where they must perform their duty, such as the time where the Nords are truly endangered or the emergence of a Dragonborn. By listening, they naturally come to learn the words of the sky, which eventually leads to their sense of hearing being keen, resulting in their voices being that of the storm. John has spent almost half of his life trying to speak the voice, while all he had to do is just listen. Sigh. All of a sudden, speaking became so distasteful. John said. Isn't it still necessary? Arngeir asked. Sadly. Then let us hear you speak. Give us a taste of your voice, Dragonborn. Chapter 537 High-Profile Pain in the Ass. Skyrim has taken its fair share of trouble as of late. Year 4 E201 has been not kind to many families since the Stormcloak movement turned into a civil war and the dragons became insanely active doing minor attacks in the wild. A few caravans and patrols encountered the dragons as of late and reported high casualties, but the attacks were all over the place. It was as if the dragons were avoiding directly going against cities and towns for some reason. While John was on his journey across Skyrim side-questing and visiting the Greybeards, the ones who were left to oversee the dragon investigation were none other than his family and friends. Jull was responsible for internal security and anti-espionage. Wulfur was keeping the places outside the city in check, while Alina traveled south to where the dragons attacked seeking further information while being accompanied by Isha, Mirren and Miranda. This lineup of Winterhold's finest was all it took to uncover parts of the situation of dragons. It became very clear after Alina was attacked 2 times by assassins after she visited the dragon attack sites and barely managed to capture one alive. Under her torturous gaze, the assassin spoke words that made no sense such as masters, blood vengeance and a certain Helmer. 3 pieces of information that meant absolutely nothing, but why would anyone associate themselves with the dragon attacks and try to ambush whoever comes there? Alina divined many ideas from the surroundings and from the souls of the dead, but things proved to be rather complicated with her coming across more questions than answers. For all we know, someone has been employed by the dragons to cover their tracks, Alina said in the family meeting during one night in the tower. Not many were present there other than the family's senior members and John's trustworthy aides. Tormund Firemane seemed concerned more than usual with such news. He tried to remember anyone that may harbor such a foul intention to work with dragons, but in all his years, he never came across such a thing. Maybe like those dragon worshippers from olden times? Hilda asked. Let's not jump to conclusions, sister. Assuming there are still remnants from the old dragon cult is a bit far-fetched. Scotty denied the possibility. John also didn't assume such a thing may happen, but this doesn't mean it may not be true. Alina sided with Hilda's assumption. If a clan or 2 survived since the first age of dragons and they had the dragon veneration in the heritage, this may make it possible. But that would make them older than any other clan. Older and more powerful than the oldest ones. It is just a possibility, but there can be any number of explanations. Maybe a clan that allied themselves with dragons, or something along the lines. In the end, we can't really be sure about it. After this discussion and a couple more, the meeting couldn't reach a single decision about what to do other than waiting on the defense. Not a nice stance looking at how Winterhold does things, but the safest for the time being. Still, it was wise of them to point fingers towards the dragons, since they are the most recent enemy to encounter. During this time, the news was heard about the Dragonborn gathering a warband and fighting pirates. Then a week after, the assault on Northwatch Keep. The ones who had to clean up the mess were the Dare Dragon Company, but judging by their dire relationship with the Thalmor, they only had to deny knowledge of the Dragonborn's actions and publicly implore him to follow the legal means in the times of war. The bullshit was wide and clear in the DDC's statement. It was nice to see Winterhold and the company back to their lawless behavior with the other powers, and despite the love-slash-hate relationships they are involved in with all the political and business forces, they were the ones that were sought out to interfere with many problems and solve all the big troublesome situations in Skyrim. It was safe to say that in politics and business, the company was doing all the side quests which involved opening trade routes for neutral businesses and negotiating peace between the east and the west of Skyrim. Then the investment bank of Winterhold and the Dare Insurance were publicly open for business not long after John's departure to High Hrothgar. Traders who travel between Winterhold and the other holds found a delicious chance in making insurance contracts with the company, while aspiring businessmen took loans to start partnerships even outside Winterhold. Slowly but smoothly, the company started expanding in the Pale and Eastmarch, even entering the cities of Dawnstar and Windhelm. During all that, Alina was busy between the minimal management she had to oversee instead of John and her job in the College of Winterhold. On one fateful day, the apprentice class of the newcomers was called for a lecture by the slow and tranquil Master Thalfdir, and Alina was assigned as his assistant in that class. A notable number of students were present, as Thalfdir was one of the most famous alteration masters in the magic community of Tamriel. In the notebook she carries, Alina kept a small parchment where John noted to her a series of events that he predicted to happen, and in a strange development, they were all unfolding today. Master Thalfdir came up and started to mindlessly give a lecture on the primary practices of magic and the safety methods in magic usage, causing the class to get stirred up a little. Even though most of them are novices and apprentices, they were all hoping to start shooting magic around like fools. A certain dark elf girl from a Telvanni lineage, a boastful Cagiate with dangerous tendencies, and a large nervous Nord young man. The three were taking most of the attention and complained when Master Thalfdir started talking about safety first. Eagerness must be tempered with caution, or else disaster is inevitable, Thalfdir stated in front of the impatient apprentices. But we've only just arrived here. You've no idea what any of us are capable of. Why not give us a chance to show you what we can do? A student argued back. Thalfdir sighed, took in a breath, and looked across the students who showed the unhealthy behavior of haste. He wanted to take another opinion on the matter, so he looked around him and saw Alina present. Knowing her, she would probably give them the scolding they deserve. "Teacher Alina, how do you think we should proceed?" Thalfdir asked. Alina glanced at the old man, not trying to realize how this situation unfolded to where he would request her opinion. According to the parchment John wrote, she should stand in a visible distance from Thalfdir, right beside the students, and when that is done, Thalfdir may actually ask for her opinion. Putting the thoughts aside, Alina cleared her voice and replied. Eagerness in the arcane arts is a quality to be praised, but those mages who ended up killing themselves were all eager as well. Not some fools who wished to meet the wrong sides of their fireballs. Take Master Thalfdir's advice and hone your lousy basics. With a magus of his caliber offering you priceless guidance, you would reach heights of which you have never dreamt. Alina said in cold indifference with an annoyed hint in her tone. Alina's moodiness is that of the unpredictable winds. One moment she is as sweet as a breeze, and the next, she is calling the thunderstorm. She never tolerated disrespect to the masters of the college, and despite her excellent knowledge, she was the complete opposite of John when it came to teaching. John would make the one in front of him feel like a child who is watching fireworks for the first time while secretly giving them the right amount of information they need to know. Thus his lectures, while rare, are singular in popularity. Alina, on the other hand, is academic to the bone. She would hammer her students with the harshest vocabulary she can muster, making her a scourge among the teachers who is only sought out by the elite students. Seeing Alina scolding the toddlers who recently joined the college, Master Thalfdir became concerned. Even John would become concerned, his note strictly instructed to stick to short answers, acting as either passive or negative, but Alina wouldn't be Alina if she didn't add some Alinaism. The newcomers were well aware of who that woman that covers her face is. Yet despite that, they were all in agreement that they needed to jump into the practical first. From that point, Master Thalfdir thought about humbling them a notch. All right, let's settle down. I suppose we can try something practical. In continuing with our theme of safety, we'll start with wards. Wards are protective spells that block magic. I'll teach you all a ward, and we'll see if you can successfully use it to block spells, all right? Thalfdir said, and turned to Alina. Teacher Alina, would you mind helping me with the demonstration? Of course, Master Thalmor. Wards are the most important offhand spells. They are practically the shields of mages. Once one masters the ways of the wards, one will be able to cast various types of wards. The most common is the magic-resisting ward. There is also the magic-reflecting ward, the magic-absorbing ward, the physical ward, and the legendary barrier magic. Some of the college's elites can call upon the special reflection ward and send back an arrow shot at them. Alina said as she stepped in front of Master Thalmor, "Should we start from the scratches and exchange a few spells?" "Yes, that would be for the best." Thalmor replied nonchalantly, "Stand there and cast a ward, Teacher Alina." Alina walked to the center of the forefront of the Hall of Elements and gracefully cast a ward that was double her size and covered her from the front to the back. Her performance was way over the top and caused the onlookers to stand in awe. Surely they know how to cast ward spells, but not to that degree of perfection where the ripples on the surface of the spell moved very slowly. This performance was almost as if she was displaying a warding barrier, a kind of spell that is considered an overkill even in the rank of expert mages. Thalmor admired Alina's spell too, but anticlimactically, he cast a simple fire bolt towards it. His fire bolt dissolved on the surface of Alina's ward without a sound. "Well, I think this is an excellent start. I'd like you all to continue practicing with wards, please. I think perhaps," Thalmor said as he was wrapping up the subject, but he was interrupted right away. "Master, can we see that one more time? We'd like to see, take more note." A very young student raised her voice and spoke in anticipation. Looking at her, this seemed to be Beth. She was attending the newcomer classes to socialize and learn anything new. Her age group was certainly rare around the college, but her excellence was not to be denied. Thalmor was about to turn her request down, but what followed hers were more requests from the other students hoping to see more magic. Novices may come from different origins, but they all share eagerness and admiration towards magic. "Well, we can manage something. Teacher Alina, I will cast a ward spell, and you shall strike it with a moderate spell." "All right." Alina and Thalmor exchanged roles, which spiced up the mood a bit. He cast a normal ward, and she browsed her mind for normal magic that shouldn't be too harmful. Using sun magic won't even harm anyone, the only harm it does is causing some tan skin. She stressed forward a hand and raised it up. "Smite." Making the runes of the spell become visible in their magic circle, Alina used the adept level Smite, a spell that is devastating towards the undead. It was akin to the sun ray breaking through the ceiling and shining a spotlight upon its target. Thalmor raised his ward up and received the magic effortlessly. "Good choice, Teacher Alina. Let's stick to the restoration school, shall we? It would be an excellent idea to make the students learn the sun spells first rather than anything dangerous." "Indeed, Master Thalmor. Let's go." An absurd exchange continued between Alina and Thalmor. When he started with a fire bolt and she replied with Smite, escalated to rather dangerous spells. "Sun Fire." Thalmor. "Starfall." Alina. "Vampire's Bane." Thalmor. "Light Slash." Alina. "Repel the Dead." Thalmor. "Lady of Mercy." Alina. "Guardian of the Living." Thalmor. "Light of the Nine." Alina. Blinding rays of light flew all over the place. Master Thalmor and Alina felt the need of exchanging some pointers on such a cold day, as it made the blood run hot. As soon as they were satisfied, they exchanged words of compliment. "This was surely refreshing, Dame Alina. I haven't done that much effort for years, fufufu." "Indeed, Master Thalmor. Exerting effort is surely beneficial. I am sure the juniors have managed to grasp the essence of what is necessary to be an excellent mage from this exquisite exchange," Alina said as she turned around. Mouths agape and skin going pale, most of the students were at the limits of their wits as the blinding exchange a moment ago took them by surprise. "Well, I am sure they learned something, anything?" Alina spoke quietly to Master Thalfdir. Well, I hope this becomes more of an encouragement for you young ones. The path to enlightenment is not easy. Also, the anti-undead magic spells are quite popular and easy to master. You should use them to spar since they will not cause you harm. Thalfdir said. You are quite right, Master Thalfdir. It will also make Master Colette very happy now that people would be interested in using restoration magic. We should suggest adding restoration training duels to the course. Aside from some tan and skin burns, nothing can't be healed. Indeed. Well then. I guess that's it for today. Leave your questions for Teacher Alina. For the next lesson, I think perhaps we're ready to begin exploring some of the various applications of magic throughout history. The college has undertaken a fascinating excavation in the ruins of Sarthal nearby. It's an excellent learning opportunity. I suggest we meet there in a few days and see what awaits us inside. That's all for now, thank you. The class was dismissed with Master Thalfdir walking away and Alina taking over. She haughtily stood over the class looking down on everyone and everything. Understandably, the ruins of Sarthal are sacred Nordic grounds which would stir a lot of trouble from the locals if treated with disrespect, thus the attendance won't be mandatory. If any of you want to register for the historical excavation site, please write your names together in a parchment and pass them over to me. I would be staying inside the Mysticism Department office till the afternoon, but beyond that, I don't want any of you following me in the city. Questions? Good. Thalfdir may have perfectly dodged all the troublesome questions by passing them to Alina, whose personality is too nasty when it comes to dealing with apprentices. She wrapped it all in a minute and walked out of the class. Not many students dared to follow her for questions save for one curious Cagiate. Teacher Alina, this one has some questions? The Cagiate spoke. Speak. Alina replied without sparing him a look. This one's name is Jargo. It has been very long since Jargo started studying magic, and Jargo aims to be the best. Jargo said. You're aiming high, huh? Best of luck. Alina looked at him in a funny way. Thank you. There is much for Jargo to aim for. There is skill in magic, there is charm, and there is a strong will. Jargo will be successful, of this there is no doubt. All right then. Teacher Alina, wait. Jargo has a few more questions. Be quick. Jargo is a natural investigator and he found out that the best mage in his age group is called John Dare. Can Teacher Alina help Jargo be better than John Dare? Jargo asked. Alina took a few moments of realization to wrap her head around what Jargo said. The Cagiate is surely competitive way beyond his own good. All right, Jargo. Alina nodded and continued, but Teacher Alina has a question for you. By all means. Jargo complied. Good. What happens when a Cagiate is struck by 100 MP of shock magicka? She asked. Jargo was about to give it a thought, but he quivered badly and shook his head as he saw Alina aiming a hand towards his feet. Well, same as anything else. Bzzzt. According to Alina, John's only competition is her, so anyone else better get in line. With the crazy Cagiate out of her way, she was about to step over him when another figure popped up out of nowhere and started poking the unconscious Cagiate with a twig. Poor kitty. John would be angry with you if he knew you hit a cat. Rude Cagiates do not count. Alina replied, Why are you here, Jull? Can't we wives check on each other from time to time? Alina covered her hand with shock magicka once again. All right, sheesh woman. Jull retreated away as she took out a small scroll from her pocket. A report came in from Jalmarch, she said. It is regarding the agents we planted around the ruins of Ustengrav. We managed to ambush her. Her? Alina asked. That woman. The one that tried to steal the Dragonstone from us in Whiterun. Delve something. Wait. You captured Delphine. Alina was surprised. Yes. She is being shipped to Winterhold on the Iron Maiden at the moment. Prior to his leave, John assigned Team 0 to guard the ruins of Ustengrav where the founder of the Greybeards, Jurgen Windcaller, was buried. Delphine would appear there to steal another item from the Dragonborn, and John was on to her. With an ambush, she fell to the excellent talents in Team 0. Right now, Winterhold has managed to bring down another high-profile pain in the ass. Chapter 538 Good Jull, Crazy Jull. Big flipping thanks to our new patrons. At Lolzman, D rank. At Zach, D rank. At Wychek Nyman, D rank. At Joseph, D rank. At Zetsua No Tempest, E rank. Capturing Delphine wasn't easy. She was a fighter and a good one at that. Her resources and connections were vast, but once she was put in chains, there were no more leeways. In her mind, those captors could be anyone or anything. She was worried over the Greybeards and the Dragonborn being all a big scheme of rumors and false news, but the involvement of the Thane of Winterhold didn't make anything understandable. Either way, if there is a Dragonborn, then she should be the one who guides them as the last sworn blade, or something along those lines. But now everything evolved into the worst-case scenario. She was captured after a tough chase. She was shipped on a boat to a large vessel, thrown in a cage, and next thing she knew, she was in Winterhold. It was all too infuriating to be captured by the likes of those superstitious Nords. Winterhold is now a Stormcloak territory, which is not entirely safe for a Breton like her, who may get treated as a Western spy. Well, at least it is not the Thalmor who got her. Either way, Delphine soon realized that it is John Dare who is her captor. The ship she was led down from was a Dare fleet ship, one with no sail. Also, those who escorted her were the rumored Black Pigeons, a shady group of people that operate in the underworld actively. After her last encounter with John Dare when she stole the Dragonstone, she tried to purchase as much information as she could on him from Riften, but she found herself under the scope of the Black Pigeons since that day. It was alarming, but now that she discovered that they work for John Dare, it all became easy to put together. Still, she can't be interrupted by those narrow-minded people. There is a greater cause she is fighting for, and she can at least make a deal with those people, if possible. The world is facing a great danger with those abominable dragons on the loose. The pride of a warlord can't be what dooms the world now. Gagged and chained, Delphine was led to the Black Room, Winterhold's infamous underground prison. She was put in a room with one table and 2 chairs, chained to the table and left for a few uncomfortable hours alone. A usual interrogating strategy, but very effective nonetheless. Eventually, her interrogator walked in. A tall, beautiful dark elf with eyes of mismatched colors and an expression that can't be read. Her face was beautiful like a doll. Not in a good way. She was giving bad vibes to Delphine every time their eyes met. Delphine didn't want to talk first, so Julliner wasn't talking rather, just simply staring. Knock knock. The door of the room has 2 light knocks sounding but didn't open up. Julliner didn't want to react to them, but in the end, she dropped her shoulders. Sorry about that. My sister is very impatient, sane people, you see. She spoke to Delphine, then looked closely. Hungry? Delphine didn't try to react, but suddenly the smell of the room changed, as if 100 corpses passed by. Delphine's empty stomach felt like it was turning on her, as she unintentionally fell from the chair in a sudden reaction. See, you would have withstood that with a stable stomach. My spiders hate washing up, so it is a bit hard to clean them when they have to nest in the caves across the hold and hunt the whole time. Julliner said mindlessly, making Delphine, whose stomach fluids were out of control, glare at her with a grudge. Don't worry, they can't eat humans. We put a curse on them so that they don't threaten the surface. Their main diet is Thalmor, though. Julliner went on and on about her inhumane practices and experiments with spiders and Thalmor. Delphine took each and every word as a threat, but it was just Julliner letting off some stress. In the end, Julliner switched topics. So, now you know this much about me. Tell me about you, she said gleefully. Delphine kept with her silent treatment but felt that the look on Jull's face was still as apathetic as ever. If you're still hungry, I can ask them to make you a sandwich, maybe some hot cocoa. I want to speak to the one in charge. Delphine finally spoke. Oh, it speaks. Jull clapped her hands in surprise. Who is the one in charge? This is Winterhold. It is Thane John Dare, right? I want to see him. Hey, are you hearing this? It wants to speak with boss. Julliner laughed as she looked towards the door. I know you hear me, whoever you are out there. Thane John would be interested in what I have to punch. Out of the blue, Julliner punched Delphine right in the face, causing her to break free from the table she was chained to and crash into the wall. You fucking speak to me in here. For no apparent reason, Julliner was totally pissed, as if the demons were raving in her head. She walked to Delphine, picked her up and threw her across the room, then back on the table, and put her on the chair once more. Delphine expressions formed the images of pain, shock, fear, questioning, then finally worry. I am sorry, what were we saying? Julliner was sitting in front of her as if nothing had happened. Actually, Delphine found herself chained once again, as if she was never thrown off the table in the first place. There was no blood on her face and her nose wasn't broken. I tend to forget stuff a lot. I am not so good at interrogating people, so I just hope you help me out. So, let's continue. The spiders, right? They live around here or there. They are really a free-spirited bunch, nothing like rumors about them. Raised them myself, you see. Julliner kept going on about her spiders and ranting about meaningless stuff. Delphine was stealing some glances around, trying to figure out what kind of cursed place she is in or figure out what she experienced just now. This is not something she can just walk out from easily at this rate. Look, I don't want you to worry. The spiders, sometimes they speak, but just ignore them. They say all manner of idiotic stuff, and don't let them near your ear. They are very curious about ears. If you are a Thalmor agent, you are dead meat as well. No, I am not Thalmor. That's what I wanted to say. Oh, I see, you should have started with that. I'm truly sorry. I am not good at this, you see. Thalmor, blades, spies, it all confuses me. Well, even if you are a former member of the Blades, you don't need to worry, my spiders won't harm you for. I didn't say that, Delphine denied. I didn't say I was a former member of the Blade. No, you said so. I didn't. No, wait. Maybe the spiders. They heard you say it in your head. They can read thoughts too. Julliner said apologetically. I didn't say that in my head either. Delphine was firmly denying her identity as a Blade member. Oh, too bad. Julliner stopped the clumsy act and returned that scary apathetic look again. Sharp pain. That's all that Delphine felt. It came from her arm. She looked towards the table where her arms were chained and found a bloody knife that cut off her right wrist along with a part of the table. She lifted her right arm up and went pale as she felt the phantom pain of losing a hand followed by the real pain. She screamed from the dreadful sensation, but her arm was grasped by Julliner, who was still holding the bloody knife. Did you lie to me? Did you just lie? Slash. And the other wrist was cut just like the first. You fucking whore. Nobody lies to me. Nobody. A series of slashing and stabbing followed right on. Delphine fell on the ground trying to fend off the attacks as Julliner rode her with eyes that carried a hint of mad ecstasy. Her pupils shrunk as her smile widened, thinly revealing the most insane psyche a person can have. In the end, Delphine's eyes were stabbed and she was blinded, but while she was choking on her blood, she opened her eyes. She was there. Just sitting. Still sitting as if nothing happened. As if it was all a bad dream. I know it is hard. Being the last member of a hunted organization, I really sympathize with you. Now you know about me and I know about you. Let's be friends, okay? When John comes home from his trip, I'll tell him about you. Don't worry, you'll be moved upstairs. Good cell, clean air, no spiders. You don't have to. No. Get away. Get away. And it happened. Delphine freaked out. She struggled, screamed, and tried to break away. It was all pointless. The chains were too strong, she was too tired. Hey, what's wrong? Julliner tried to comfort her, but the latter was cowering away, as if she was avoiding a monster, but suddenly, Delphine saw a third shadow in the room. A shadow that looked exactly as if it was Julliner, and it was holding a knife, right behind her. Scream. In the next room, 3 figures were watching how the interrogation was going. Did we break her? Julliner asked. Oh, we did. We did long ago. Alina replied. It is fun. Miranda added. Alina was standing in the middle holding the skull of corruption in one hand and Jull's hand in the other, drawing nasty thoughts from her mind. The skull of corruption has the ability to clone people and cause nightmares to come to life. Alina used Julliner as a medium to let her crazy come to life in 2 images, the lovable chatterbox and the obsessed psychopath. Meanwhile, Miranda was here just for the horror show, her favorite genre. Remind me again why we're doing this? Jull asked. John wanted us to give her some special treatment until he returns, remember? Alina said. I hoped I could really do that, not have some illusions doing it for me. Julliner complained. We still want her alive. TSK. Let's stop screwing around. We have duties to attend to. Strange enough, Julliner was bored from the show and went away, causing Alina's magic to stop functioning. Alina didn't really care, so she hid the staff away and followed Julliner out, leaving Delphine in the holding room. What's wrong? Alina asked. Too many spies are roaming the hold recently. Some are even recruiting locals. Julliner spoke her concerns. So we have traitors. Yes. It is problematic since we do not target our people, so we need hard evidence to draw them out. Alina and Julliner fell to silence. They were expecting to deal with such cases after the recent rise of the population, as those who are not natives to Winterhold and those who came with hidden agendas from the start are acting right now. Our enemies are moving together again? What could be their motive this time? Alina asked. John's investment bank is making the others scared. We are now moving on a rapid pace outside the hold and will eventually control a large chunk of the Stormcloak territory before going into the new hold. Alina nodded. But such a move would need a whole lot of funding. We are the experts of money and we know about every septim going in and out. This can only be done by someone with heavy pockets. You suspect the faction that keeps sending killers? Julliner asked. Maybe. Listen, I have a plan. Do you have a location on any cell of those assassins? Alina questioned. We suspect a place. Why? I have some ideas for a counterattack and, Alina walked by to Delphine's cell. I think our new best friend in here can have a role to play in the bigger scheme of things. John wouldn't mind, right? Julliner shrugged her shoulders as she handed Alina the key to Delphine's cell. Alina effortlessly opened it and stepped inside to see Delphine standing in the furthest corner of the room, holding a chair as a weapon and drenched in a cold sweat. You're real. Heh. Alina grinned widely and shrugged her shoulders. Don't know. Maybe you can tell me. Am I real? Or am I in your head? To be honest, I was real ly in your head just a while ago. Those illusions and stuff, but I think we got off on the wrong foot. Now how about this? You do something for us and we let you meet our Dragonborn. Wasn't that what you after all along? John may have said to keep Delphine locked and spoiled, but Alina had another thing in mind. Something that may be way worse than just some torturous lodging. Chapter 539 Sincerely. ly/2dx3dx. Discord. GG/GKCKVA7. Instagram @Don_Dokmasi. Twitter @Eldokmezi22. If Delphine was able to shake off the company's hidden forces for a month only to get caught by John's otherworldly knowledge, then she is no ordinary person. She is capable and dangerous, so it is better to control her. Alina foresaw a good outcome from using Delphine's talent. She was still shackled and restrained under the watchful eyes of a dozen agents, as well as Miranda and Julliner. So, I speak to the Queen of Winterhold. Yes, you do. I go by many names, but as a humble person, you can call me Dame Alina or Lady Dare. And why was I brought here? Why did I get tortured? As my husband would say it, to loosen you up a bit. We have to introduce ourselves properly before we come down to business, right? Now you know what we can do, just in case you have any funny ideas in mind. Stealing the horn of Jurgen Windcaller, for example. Alina elaborated. Delphine looked at Alina suspiciously and then looked at Julliner, who was smiling at her, then twisted that smile into a vicious grin, Miranda, who was daydreaming in a corner alone, and each and every agent who were aiming small lethal crossbows at her. I can already see. But when I tried to steal the horn, I didn't mean to get under your skin. I was only trying to establish a connection with the Dragonborn? We are well aware of that. To be frank, the likes of you are a bad influence on the Dragonborn, and he knows it. That's not for you to judge. My. Why are you trying to prevent the Dragonborn from achieving his destiny if it is true? You think the dragons are not a real threat, or do you people from Winterhold only care about power and leverage? You think so? I know so. Why else would John dare take the Dragonborn under his wing and keep his identity a secret? Delphine became more aggressive as she tried to walk to Alina. An agent was about to hit her with a baton, but Alina raised a hand. You are right, Delphine. All we care about is power, leverage, and money. A Dragonborn is a force beyond reckoning. You don't want such power to be manipulated by an empire or an Aldmeri dominion, don't you? Then why are you manipulating him? He has a destiny to make and you just want to use him for your gains. Use him for our gains? Let me tell you this, the Dragonborn is Winterhold's core asset and he is the most respected and loved person in this hold. I will never share him. I mean, we will never let anyone even fancy the idea of thinking that they can have the ability to influence him. He is our beacon of hope. Sister, I think you are having conflicted emotions. Julliner. Shut it. Alina cleared her voice and returned her focus on Delphine. There are too many lines in Winterhold, and we want you to respect them. Prove that you can and you will be able to meet the Dragonborn. He is looking forward to seeing you too, believe me. Alina extended her offer by tossing a scroll towards Delphine. What is that? Delphine asked. Details of your mission. We want you to infiltrate a band of killers. We suspect them to be a cult of some sort, and we need to know where they come from. Alina said. Delphine looked around her, then back to Alina again. I think you have excellent manpower already. Why me? Alina smiled gleefully and didn't reply at first, but then she spoke her intentions. Because you are expendable. Simply saying it would make anyone rage around. Delphine frowned in anger, but Alina was right. She doesn't hold any value other than her skills, which are not that rare in Winterhold, making her easily replaceable. Each agent we train requires time and resources. We consider them as family and don't send them on suicide missions. A death cult infiltration is a suicide mission only a desperate person with your particular set of skills may comply to do, but let me tell you this. Try to double-cross us, and what you experienced in the holding cell just a while ago will haunt you for the end of your days. Alina summoned the Skull of Corruption once again and cast a powerful curse on Delphine. There was no need to explain what this curse can do. My sisters will fill you in the details. Do not disappoint me, Delphine. Playing the villain was a role that became very usual in this household. John, Alina, and Julliner, the three of them almost perfected and embraced their two-faced natures for the good of the hold. Little in her past did she think to live as a tyrant and rule with an iron fist from the shadows. Alina always abided by righteousness, but some things can't be done without getting one's hands dirty, such as ruling and protecting. As the de facto authority of Winterhold, many lives are at stake, and the 2 years she spent taking care of Winterhold alone changed her quite a bit. She learned when to be ruthless, when to be merciful, and when to dodge a bullet. She may have had her clan and the firemen's to her back, but with John around, it is amazing how much power can the presence of a single person affect things. The things she can do and the freedoms increased, but so did the threat. John was born under the stars of the serpent. Such stars would bring about difficulties to those who lead others, thus the ancient tradition among the clans was to never give authority to those whose stars are the serpent. Leading Winterhold showed that such superstitions can be actually true. Either way, there is work that needs to be done. Julliner and Miranda will focus on Delphine's mission, while Alina would normally oversee the company and do her important job in the college. Earlier this week, Elishka from the bathhouse delivered a piece of news that somehow upset Alina. It seemed that John and Elishka were working on a secret minor side project that no one knew about, and it touches the investment banking system. The bathhouse hostess's career was not a stable one, as most girls who desperately need money only work there for short periods of time, unlike how things used to go 5 years ago. Still, the queen bee's system is active. The queen bees is a term that refers to the most successful girls in the bathhouse who usually have beauty and talent in entertaining the guests. Their prices were always higher compared to the average girls, but just like the most, they don't work for a long time. It seemed that John had found a more devious way to employ those queen bees, and that was the bank for some reason. He offered current and former queen bees the opportunity to work in the bank as partnership agents. The job description is simple. Those agents would assist a number of associated clients which the bank has invested in their businesses regarding management and financial advising. In other words, those agents manage the bank's interests with the bank's customers. Now, why did John think of using those queen bees as agents? Well, it is simple. An agent's job is quite free from the company's rules. As long as there is money flow, there is a huge cut for the agent, which means this is a very social skill-related job. The queen bees are beautiful and young, giving them the advantage of being able to sway the people's decisions quite easily. The assignment of the queen bees would target large-scale businesses rather than small ones. During the first month, the bank gave out business loans and invested in small businesses like farms and wood mills, as well as large businesses like wineries, mines, trading companies, and such. The queen bees were given the green light to do just about anything as long as it is in the bank's favor, which is their backing, and this meant a wide array of things. They can pretty much form bonds with those business partners, or anything they fancy. The most important thing is that the bank gets high approval rate and profit. Just how could the noble-born Alina agree on such a despicable method? Yes, she can get her hands dirty regarding anti-espionage, and even killing, but this is dealing with enemies. But now she is sending girls to seduce the business partners into getting more involved with the company. She banged her head on the desk in frustration after Elishka left with her reluctant approval. It is true what was said about business, dirty as politics and bloody as war. The DDC's control has completely overtaken the deadly triad of trade, pleasure, contraband, and arms dealing. The trade that can control the fate of nations. This now means that the company has absolute supremacy in the underworld of organized crime. Lady Boss. Yes. Sev the secretary entered the office as Alina raised her tired head of the office. A student from the college came by. He said that the excavation team is on its way to Sarthal. Alina's eyes widened as she looked at the calendar and found that it is today. Thanks, Sev. Like the wind, Alina took her staff and gathered her notes, then teleported out of the office to the family's house in Sarthal. From there, she rode on her snuggling griffin and flew across the city to the south where the old ruins stand. The ruins of Sarthal, a site that is very sacred to all Nords and was in the center of the college's attention recently. The clans showed displeasure regarding the mages going through a sacred ancestral ground, but it was John who called them off, saying that the Nords of today are dwarfs to the Nords of olden days, and studying their traces is honoring them rather than letting the age turn it to dust. Thus the Nords never complained and the college got access to the ruins of Sarthal. Alina was assigned on the team as a favor to John, who made this happen, and as an assurance to all Nords that this excavation will be in safe hands. On the other hand, Alina was rummaging through the notes John gave here. Instruction of what to do and where to go. Things to read now and things only to read it. She encountered certain situations. In truth, John left many things blurry in order to not spoil anything, and made a few good cliffhangers of his own to motivate her. Once she arrived where the excavation site is, Alina found the students from the last season and a few teachers and researchers from the college led by Master Thalmor. She silently joined the ranks of the teacher, and when the time came, the seal on the ancient barrow was undone. Of course, the place was previously explored a few days ago to ensure its safety and relocate any important objects of study. As the students walked slowly in the old dusty tomb, many were complaining about the lighting and the narrow passages, forcing the teachers to disqualify any troublemakers from the get-go. Those who do not take the excavation seriously are not welcome anywhere inside the tomb. The situation became better when the team delved deeper into the innermost area, where many ancient murals and stone steels were found. Those who had the talent of studying and excavating ignored the rough conditions of the place, and listened to the instructions carefully while Alina strayed alone further in the tomb. She has had the opportunity to explore ancient barrows before alongside John, who was an absolute pervert when it comes to ancient artifacts and treasures. He simply would stop at nothing to profile, study and analyze all the markings and words written anywhere on these walls. He always said full exploration, max experience, especially when he explores all the possible routes first before following the right one which he already knows about. Either way, Alina followed John's instructions and, to her surprise, she found one of the fellow teachers deep inside the tomb, as John's notes said. "Wait. Who goes there? Students aren't allowed here." "Teacher Arniel? It is me." Alina spoke. "Oh, Lady Alina, I didn't realize it was you. What are you doing here?" The one who met her was a balding Breton who goes by Arniel Gain. A teacher who has a bad relationship with John and always suspects everyone to be trying to steal his work. He saw Alina and hid his journal right away. The note John wrote said, "Deep under Sarthal, you find a man whose hair was long gone from worry and suspicion. Ask to assist him, and he will give you directions. Sincerely, John Dare." Alina did as the note said. She found Arniel Gain trying to avoid her, so she offered help, and he told her to gather and record anything she may found in the dead-end area beyond his workplace. Alina agreed and went away as she read the rest of the note. His direction leads you to a fruitless search. Do what you will, but find the amulet on the wall. Pick it up. Sincerely, John Dare. John wrote the prophecy in a provoking way just to mess with Alina. She indeed followed what he wrote and found some golden artifacts hidden in burial urns, and as she delved deeper, she found a strange wall at the end of a tunnel. Indeed, as John said, there was a totemic amulet hanged on that wall like a talisman of sorts. She carefully picked it up, but as soon as she did, screech! A noisy metallic screeching was heard from behind her. She hastily put on a protective spell, and made sure to break into running, only to find that the path she came from was blocked by crude iron spike. The sound caused the whole expedition to be alert, and the whole team came to see what happened. Alina was indeed trapped behind the spikes that ride from the ground, but that didn't mean she can just teleport out. Still, she felt strange energy coming from the amulet she held, as if it was stopping her from escaping. What in the world was that racket? Everything all right? Master Thalmor asked as he checked the strange spikes. It seems that I have activated an ancient mechanism. How clumsy of me! Alina replied. What is important is that you are all right, my daughter. Fascinating. How did that happen? I pulled this strange amulet of the wall, Alina said as she raised the amulet up. From what I can tell, it carries a very profound and mystical seal. The subject of our interest in these ruins. Marvelous, I would say, she said as she examined the amulet and then looked at what John's note had to say. Master Thalmor can enlighten you. Sincerely, John Dare. She looked away from the note to Thalmor, who was thinking. Perhaps the amulet is important somehow. Is there some way you can use it? Thalmor asked. Alina simply checked the amulet for any curse or infection, and once it was clear, she decided to put it on. At that moment, she felt a tonal effect coming from the wall and linked to the amulet. Do you see that? Some kind of resonance, you and the wall. It must be connected to the amulet. I wonder, Thalmor observed from outside as Alina was acting. Tonal seals are rare. John would love to immerse himself in studying such a subject as the expert in the matter, but Alina can take all the necessary notes. She walked towards the wall and felt its energy resonating with her own, as if inviting her to use her magic. All right, Mr. Wall. Your funeral. Alina simply coated her hand with frost magica and punched the hard wall for it to crumble as if it was made of biscuit. Screech. With the wall crumbling, the spikes blocking the wall fell into their socket. Alina observed the action of magica around her and noted a magic circuit hidden behind the ground that would channel tonal magica into the spikes, forcing them to go up, and with the amulet stuck on the wall, it created an equalizer to hinder the trap. Once Alina removed it, the trap was active, so Alina had to break the wall in order to open the magica circuit and lower the trap. Tonal magica is very effective in traps as it can detect sounds and activate the traps accordingly. That's why sneaking soundlessly may help at venturing through the old ruins easily. Either way, Thalmor walked over to Alina and observed the passage that was opened behind the wall she broke. Well, would you look at that? This appears to lead somewhere. Let's see where it goes. I'm not sure what to expect here. Please be on your guard, he said as he led the way inside. As two teachers, Thalmor and Alina were qualified to explore the path ahead. The other teachers watched over the path as they forbade the students from following. There, Alina and Thalmor walked through a narrow passage. It was dark, dusty and depressing, but the two passed over while hovering by magic to not touch any dangerous trap. That until they found a room, an ancient narrow room. There were an altar and 3 sarcophaguses in that room. It fit the description of a secret treasure room, but there were not treasures or any of the sort, just old dusty broken wares. The two mages looked at each other and shrugged their shoulders. It was rare to see such a thing on Nordic ruins, but it all changed when Alina got closer to the altar. The world stopped. The time froze. Even the dust kept hanging in the air in an eerie manner. What is that? Alina turned to Thalmor, but he was frozen as everything else, with a lazy look in his face, as if he was sculpted. Gleam! Alina called for the spirit of the Elder Gleam, which reacted to her but couldn't respond. It felt better now. It seems that this is an even more mysterious trap than before. She looked at the notes and found, Dear wife, I know you have a bad sense of your surroundings, but there is a ghost standing near the altar. Hear him out, please. Sincerely, John Dare. Alina turned away to the altar to see a silhouette forming of mystical energy. It seemed to be waiting for her to interact with it. A record. She was aware of the principle but not the magic. Recorded magic is something akin to a rune trap, but much more sophisticated. Once she got closer to it, it reacted. Hold, mage, and listen well. Know that you have set things in motion that cannot be undone. Judgment has not been passed, as you had no way of knowing. Judgment will be passed on your actions to come, and how you deal with the dangers ahead of you. This warning is passed to you because the Psijic Order believes in you. You, mage, and you alone have the potential to prevent disaster. Take great care, and know that the Order is watching. The vision stopped, the time felt free again, as if it got its lucidity back slowly and carefully. Alina remained still until she remembered that she also needed to breathe. Her eyes twitched and finally reacted to the words of the man from the recorded vision. Judgment, dangers, Psijic Order, disaster, and some creepy old dudes are watching. John, what have you got me into this time? She furiously looked into the last page in the note. I believe in you too, wife. Sincerely, John Dare. Chapter 540 The Eye. So most of you can already tell from the title of the chapter what's about to happen. Good. Still, in some patrons' comments on this chapter, they told me that they thought that John had already acquired the eye when he rebuilt Sarthal. While the patrons are mostly smarter and sexier than the average reader, I'd like to remind you all that this didn't happen. He rebuilt the city near the old one on the way west of Winterhold where the players randomly fight a troll or some wolves. He left the crypt of Sarthal untouched. Sneeze. Alina, you're alright. I sneeze. I hate dust. I hate walking corpses. I hate everything at this moment. The situation wasn't looking good for Alina, who started to explore the ruins alone with Gleam. There were no longer sincere, annoying notes from John, so all that she had to do was to explore the ruins on her own. Draugrs were one thing, but this particular ruin was not crawling with unordinary ones. There were hulking Draugrs and Deathlords leading a number of Draugr Scourges and Scourge Lords. It wasn't exactly a walk in the park, but nothing Alina couldn't handle. Other than Alina, who was exploring alone, Master Talfdir lagged behind as he was trying to secure anything worthy of studying. After the vision Alina experienced from a Psijic monk, she told Talfdir about what she saw, and he seemed to be hardly believing it, but encouraged her to uncover the truth about this place. She was also interested in the legacy that the Nords might have left behind to attract the attention of the Psijic Order itself. Aside from the line of Dyvaith Efwar's disciples, there are a few schools around Tamriel that are just as honorable and prestigious. Among them are the Greybeards of Skyrim, the Durrani clan of High Rock, and the Psijic Order of Somerset. However, none could rival the Psijics in terms of foretelling and knowledge, as they are the true masters of mysticism. It is also known that Dyvaith Fyr and Sotha Sil were once members of the order. It is strange that John knew about this place and the appearance of the Psijic monk. Alina would have guessed that John wouldn't miss a meeting with those monks for the world, but he simply gave it to her. It didn't seem like something he would do. Still, she can't miss such a chance either. The Psijic monks didn't appear for a long time in the world, and she was the first person to meet them after 200 years of their disappearance. Even Nurina would die from jealousy. And finally, here it was. Alina broke through all the traps and the enemies until she arrived at the largest chamber in the crypt. Wow! In all its glory, the prize of her efforts stood at the other end of this as nothing she has ever seen before. A spectacle to the eyes and all the other senses as well. If she was to say it, she would lose the words as they come to mind. A hovering orb covered in the most mystical of runes rotating majestically on an array of magicka focus point. The style of the array seemed primal compared to today's applications, but its shocking power made someone with the level of Alina have a hard time breathing. Alina, watch out! Amidst the mesmerized state of mind she was in, Gleam's voice pulled her back to reality. Her awareness returned as she barely avoided a magic projectile that almost hit her face. Still, the magic managed to rip her face veil away. Bastard! Her rage was instantly unleashed as she waved her staff to return the attack almost tenfold. Her target was the Draugr that was resting down the chamber, which she only noticed just now. As John said, her awareness is terrible. Alina is a diviner mystic completely opposite to John, who is a seeker mystic. The two branches of mysticism are about gaining knowledge, one through time and the other through space. Alina was natural with divining through time, which made her sense of space become rather poor, the weakness that she couldn't manage to cover till now. Still, once a diviner mystic is triggered into battle mode, they are already several steps ahead of their opponent. Alina's attack just now was followed by another, then another. The Draugr wanted to retaliate at her, but each magic he cast was broken and countered ahead of its time. That's how a diviner fights. Still, that wasn't omnipotent as people would think. She may know ahead, but she is still bound by time, and if she can't figure out a way to retaliate before the future she saw becomes present, it would be useless. Another weakness of knowing the future is not fully knowing it. For example, the resistance properties. Alina may have attacked the Draugr with magic, but to her surprise later on, it didn't even scratch the undead. Damnation! What are you made of? Teacher Alina, wait up! From behind her, Master Thalmor came in as he was out of breath. I told you not to break anything. It is of absolute importance that we. Oh, that looks dangerous. Thalmor was about to lecture Alina for causing a ruckus until he noticed the floating orb and the dangerous-looking undead. Duck! Alina hurriedly pulled the old man away from harm as the Draugr cast another almost instantly. I take that as this is no ordinary Draugr to cause such ruckus. Thalmor went back on his lecturing attitude. The look on Alina's face was like no shit, but she then pointed to the large orb. That is probably its power source, she said. It seems you are right. I can sense a strong link. Thalmor agreed. One of us has to cover the other to disturb the link. I'll take the Draugr. Alina nodded and went forward while blocking another spell by a ward and repaying it with the hazardous spell freeze to bypass the Draugr's resistance, while Master Thalmor simply teleported across the chamber. The fight continued as the undead which walked off the frozen surface without even flinching. From what it seemed, this Draugr was particularly an expert of frost spells and has a high resistance to them. Game on! Alina's pride almost felt hurt as she switched from frost to the anti-undead sun magic. Her radiation spells made the Draugr wither in pain as he cast his best ward shields and started conjuring a number of frost Atranax. The towering Atranax started climbing the platform up towards Alina with the ground shaking to their heavy footsteps, and the interior of the ruin started vibrating and cracking. Alina didn't want to destroy the interior, so she acted right away. Gleam, take my staff. Alina surrendered her staff to the small fairy Gleam, who could cast its basic spells, and from her robes, she grabbed 2 grips and pulled them out with the sound of unsheathing swords. 2 deadly-looking sabers appeared in Alina's hands as she finally became serious. Those blades were Blood Scythe and a Soul Render, a pair of deadly swords that are infamous for their ability to turn their wielder into an eternal berserker. These were parts of the Deathbrand set which Alina owns. She nimbly kicked the ground and jumped like a monkey in the middle of the Atranax. Her small size in comparison to the Frost Atranax gave her the complete advantage of slipping through those Daedra without being so much hindered. Each one didn't require more than 2 slashes, as her moves were akin to a mad dancer from the east on the sounds of a raging czar. Hiya! 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 Her aura conjured the wind and the storm that is. Alina was dancing with breathtaking motions. Her college robe couldn't keep up with her motions as it fell off, showing the perfect slender Stalrim armor she was wearing and the hair that moved after her like a dancing ribbon. With the end of her nimble show, she spread her arms like wings with the blades in reverse grips as the last of the Atranax was put down. She joined the sabers together and faced the powerful Draugr that caused all this mess. Sovngarde Saran. The Draugr opened its rotten maw and spoke. Sovngarde Balin. Alina replied in the same language, the dragon language. It means Sovngarde awaits. Sovngarde welcomes. Reminds you of something? The Draugr became enraged as he heard Alina's reply and shrieked badly as he charged at her, shooting magic from his staff and waving his axe. Alina didn't move or dodge, she stood silent and received the magic as if she was unaffected, but once the axe strike cut through her, her image disappeared as if she was never there from the start. A decoy. The Draugr didn't even realize when he was beheaded or from where. Alina appeared behind him as the head of the Draugr flew off upward and landed perfectly on the side of her blade. Alina faced the head with a sneer as she served him true death. With no further interest, she slipped the head past the side of her blade and artistically returned the two sabers to their sheaths. That was incredible, Teacher Alina. Thank you, Master Thalmor. Thalmor stopped the spell. He used to interrupt the connection between the Draugr and the large orb just to relax and take a breath before focusing on the strange floating orb and its mysterious ruins. What is that? He asked. I have no idea. Alina replied, I guess if Master Thalmor doesn't know, then we should bring the rest of the research team down here. Thalmor thought for a while, then shook his head. No, that wouldn't be good. Let's inform the Archmage first and cancel the excavation class for a later date. This artifact, I don't know how, but it provided the undead Draugr with unending power. It is dangerous, Thalmor said. All right. Alina agreed and sealed the entrance to the chamber, then directed her attention to trying to identify the large orb with Master Thalmor. She was almost certain that John knows exactly what's going on here, and he wanted her to take the credit for it. It doesn't suit Alina's style to be put in puzzles and circles, but she found this one to be a mystery that she sought out the answers. First, she tried to find a relationship between the undead Draugr and the orb, but soon discovered nothing in that direction other than unique Draugr's ability to manipulate magicka almost better than Nurina herself. Now that was something to contemplate on. A Draugr with such ability had to be someone incredible in life, but he was no dragon priest or anything of the sort. In the end, she found a writ of seal. Be bound here, Jirik, murderer and betrayer. Condemned by your crimes against realm and lord. May your name and deeds be forgotten forever, and the charm which you bear be sealed by our ward. A criminal? And a charm? Something you found, Teacher Alina. Nothing. It seems our friend here was some sort of condemned criminal, Alina said as she kept the sealing talisman. A criminal? I can hardly believe it. A mage of such caliber doesn't need to resort to crime. Ancient Nords honored mages like that. Well, who knows? At least there is no foreseeable clue on his lead regarding the orb. I'll return and inform the Archmage right away. Thalmor nodded and returned to focus on the mysterious orb while Alina looted the staff of Jirik, which was even more powerful than her own, and took the charm that was on what remained of his neck that she just decapitated. It seemed like a fragment of an ancient Nordic amulet, but its power was something to behold. Alina could feel her power soar up a few folds when she tied it around her hand like a bracelet. So this was the source of the Draugr's skill. If other mages were to find out about such an item, some of them might go crazy and try to steal it, Alina thought as she covered the amulet carefully. A powerful staff and a ridiculous amulet. John sure knew how to throw rewards in the way of his friends, just like how he guided Wulfur to a certain Dwemer ruin that made the poor guy almost go crazy. Still, Alina knew that the large orb is the mystery John wanted her to uncover. She didn't stand idle and hurriedly exited the crypt heading towards the college, but on the way back, she ran into a pair of familiar faces. You have seen it, right? Master said you will do it. Beth spoke. Alina stopped facing Beth and Jax, who seemed to have taken their fair share of frostbites in the middle of this snowy road. What are you two doing here? Alina asked. Master said to wait for you and confirm that you found the eye, Beth said. The eye. Yes. He said that you will find the eye of an actual Iteda and wanted us to remind you that you must take the amulet of the Draugr that was guarding the eye. So he was aware of all that was inside. I knew it. Alina held her head, but she was somehow satisfied with her findings. Then, he asked me to give this to you, Beth said. Alina received a note from Beth that was filled with John's writings. She was fed up with his notes and didn't have the mind for his silly jokes, but while she was reading it, her face went pale in an instant. She instantly incinerated the note and took Beth by the hand, and as if to make sure the girl is safe. Master Alina, what is wrong? Hush. Alina signaled to Beth not to speak. Is there anything wrong? Beth spoke carefully. Jax, take the girl home. Alina shouted, but the time to retreat was over. All of a sudden, figures emerged from the snow surrounding Alina, Beth and Jax from every corner. Humans, elves, undead. All strong and bloodthirsty. Alina couldn't see how they snuck up on her, but they didn't manage to take her by surprise. Identify yourself? Alina shouted. The leader of the mysterious group pointed his blade at Alina. Kill the beast and the child, capture the wife. His sinister words gave off how unnatural the man or the creature is, yet Alina didn't flinch one bit. She simply drew power from the amulet around her wrist and held the staff of Jirik firmly. Want a piece of the queen, eh? And here I was thinking about some target practice. Chapter 541 Enemies from All Corners. Big thanks to our new patron at Makash Crawl, C rank. Messy, fast-paced, and bloody. This was that kind of fight that awaited Alina. She was outnumbered and isolated. She had to protect Beth, and try to cover for her and Jax to retreat safely to the town. Master Alina. I called for help, but I couldn't reach. It seemed that Beth was trying to reach anyone in the city via telepathy, but her efforts were useless, as if she was being jammed. She knew this feeling from that time in Hammerfell when there was an interference from the soul snare spell. Careful! They are using the soul trap spells. Alina, on the other hand, was aware of the disadvantage. At that moment, a sorcerer standing behind the group of the attackers cast dark magic, which released a dozen dark chains towards Alina and the other two. Jax carried Beth in one arm, cast bound flaming wings by the other, and took the air while attacking anyone chasing him by lava whip. Thankfully, he could protect Beth, giving Alina the space she needs to worry about herself and the enemies. At first, she attempted to conjure a number of Atranax to aid her in the fight, but no matter what she did, the dark sorcerer in the back countered it. He even managed to turn some of the Atranax against her, while the others were sent back to oblivion. Bastard! Alina cast an overcharged ice spike to get rid of the annoying mage, but he warded it off almost effortlessly. Get her. The Lord will have great use of her. One the other, the man who led the warriors surrounding her shouted at the others. Alina rolled her eyes and fried 3 of the warriors who were walking towards her with lightning. She then faced the man and spoke. You know what? Fuss Aroda. Her shout was very accurate, as it left the man no leeway to even be surprised. Once the shout landed, it blasted the man far away and tore off his arm. Alina then gave off the best chain lightning spell she could use with the staff of Jirik, paralyzing more of the enemies that were chasing Jax and Beth. Now she was facing the annoying sorcerer. You and me. She called for a duel, but the man didn't even react. It was as if his hidden face under the large hood was sunk in the abyss without even the hint of him breathing. Maybe it was an undead mage, but Alina cared less. She cast a sunfire spell and teleported away as a few arrows landed on her location. Instantly, she appeared behind the archer, and with her blood scythe, she cut the man's arm, leg, gutted him, and split his skull. I started playing for honor, so... Her eyes landed on the mage, who seemed unfazed by the sun spell she cast at him, meaning that this foul, evil aura surrounding him is not undeath. Yet whatever it was, it is just as evil. Alina was now free from restrictions as Jax and Beth had successfully escaped. She aimed her attention at the sorcerer, and he cast multiple flame spells towards her. Once a spell hit her, she disappeared as if she was made of illusion and appeared behind the sorcerer with her blade aimed at his heart. It hit, stabbed, tore skin, muscle and bone and went from the other side, but the man cared even less. Alina's instincts screamed as she let go of the sword and moved her hand quickly to hold a dagger that was aimed at her side by that sorcerer. Her hand held it from the blade, but it injured her, ignoring how strong her skin was. The dagger didn't stop at this point and started digging its teeth in her palms, as if it was growing thorns, causing a strange black substance to spread through the veins of her hand. It was unforeseeable to be injured this easily and to even be poisoned with her clan's bloodline that is very resistant to poison. Alina jumped off her place, kicked with her 2 feet at the dark sorcerer, sending him a few meters away and landing badly. Hee. The man who led the party of attackers, the one who lost his arm by her shout, came towards her while carrying his torn arm and a disgusting smile forming on his face. "That's a naughty girl," he said as he placed his torn arm where it should have been, as if he is putting himself back together. In a bizarre scene, his arm started to reattach itself back where it was torn, as if the man was no mortal. This crazy scene frightened Alina, but her anger was far greater at the moment. She took out the dagger that dug itself in her right palm and puked a mouthful of dark poisonous blood all of a sudden. The man saw that and froze, as he couldn't understand how she managed to take the poison of her bloodstream and puke it from her mouth, but as mysterious as he was, as mysterious as she is. And a glare. Alina's red, devastating glare. No man, mare, beast, undead or even Daedra can survive that. The man wailed and screamed from the pain that caused his veins to pop out and burst open, gushing out blood from even his eyes. Voice transformation *AH. The screams of the man changed from the normal voice of a human to the shriek of an evil being. The man was still screaming, but something else was screaming inside him. Alina focused on that and put all her focus on it as she screamed as well. Then, it disappeared. Whatever was screaming inside that man, it was purged by Alina's glare. The man who stood in front of her suddenly lost his power and died on the spot. Swoosh, swoosh. 2 arrows were shot at Alina, one hit her right shoulder, and she rolled on the ground before the other would hit her. In fear of poisoning, she took out the arrow almost immediately, groaning from the pain, but managed to take a look at the archer. It was that archer, the one she butchered just a minute ago. He was standing with no cut limbs or split skull, even though there were blood traces and cut marks where she hacked him. That man didn't only get miraculously healed but was revived. Revived. Alina didn't seem to understand what was going on, but 2 things were certain. First, these men are not humans anymore and neither undead. They do not smell like wet dogs either, so they are not like the werbeasts who have a supernatural healthcare insurance. Second, they are possessed by something evil, as when she purged that thing by her glare, both it and its hosts died. That's a new threat she never even heard about. Even the dark sorcerer that annoyed oblivion out of her was standing up and taking out the sword she drove through his heart. Alina wasn't sure of what creatures she was fighting, but one thing she is sure of. "You bitches messed with the wrong bitch." She spoke in rage as she turned towards the sky. "Kyne, hear my plea." Her voice tore through the wind and reached the heavens. She didn't shout the storm call. But as the child of Kyne just pleaded, a storm was brewed. The staff of Jirik was a legendary artifact, and it suited the daughter of the storm very well. Alina conjured a dozen cyclones around her, making the archer's arrows all useless. The dark sorcerer started using magic to revive the fallen allies Alina took down, but the storm's frost and lighting struck them down and kept killing them. The raging cyclones roamed across the battlefield, rampaging and taking down anything in their wake. Alina was carried by the wind as the staff in her hand acted as the punishing whip of the scourge. She would take the revived enemies one after another up to her level by telekinesis, purge the entities inside them with her eyes, letting them experience the most terrible death there is. Pushing her to a corner had its limits, as Alina is a monster that is second only to John around these parts. Above all that, she was insanely powered with the amulet around her wrist. The amulet that is the axis of a forbidden legend. Who was left standing was the dark sorcerer and a few of the elites, who were barely fending for their lives. They didn't scream or beg for mercy, but rather, they groaned in their demonic voices that were almost like the sound of the grinding of metal. "We will come back for you, Red Witch. Next time, our master shall make you his bride, and will scotch this land back to the ruins it rose from." The dark sorcerer announced the most infuriating thing that Alina didn't really need to hear at the moment. Alina's storm settled down gradually until it was no more, but the thickening gloomy sky could clearly reflect her mood. In her wake were the corpses of those whom she purged, each in a bloody mess. The battle was so one-sided that Alina's red and black made her more like a villainous queen from Oblivion rather than the lady who was just under attack. She finally spoke. "You know how angry those words of yours made me feel, whatever you are. But know this, you are a being of pain, and this land, the land you once scorched, and this woman, the woman you so brazenly declared to belong to some man she never heard of, they can cause you pain more than whatever you experienced in your damnedest lowly life. Curse you, Red Witch! I am immortal," the dark mage said. "You think so?" she asked. "All right, you are even more stupid than I thought you are. An advice on my part. You may want to say less stupid things when that person is standing right behind you." As Alina pointed, the man didn't simply turn his head, as he was certain she was trying to trick him. But that wasn't the case. There was a very angry person right behind him. All of a sudden, 2 rows of teeth bit on that man's left ear and tore it away like a beast. The man hardly flinched from this level of pain, but as he turned back, 2 daggers were driven into his guts. One went up, the other went down. The person who did that simply grabbed the sorcerer's intestines and rounded them around his neck, then dragged the sorcerer by them and slammed him on the ground. "You don't get to speak like this to my daughter." Hilda spoke every word while serving a punch to the sorcerer's face, whose hood was torn away, revealing his semi-Daedric appearance. The other elites saw the champion of their lord taken down, and all rushed at Hilda with their blades high, but there was another something greeting them. John would call that a dwarven locomotive if he saw it from the same angle those people did, but this was simply a large man wearing a full dwarven suit of armor and carrying an oversized shield that looked like the face of a train. The men were all swooped in one charge by Wulfur. Those who didn't get disabled were done by the full might or a dreadful warhammer that he swung around like a maniac. Once he was done, he stomped on the undamaged limbs of these men, completely crushing them. Those fuckers. They even came after Alina. Wulfur was so annoyed to the point where he shouted out his frustration. "Even?" Alina questioned as she walked over to Hilda. "Mother, what's going on?" Hilda stood up as she stomped on the sorcerer's head, burying it in the snow and breaking it open. "Attacks. They are attacking everywhere around Winterhold. It is like a war," Hilda replied. "A war?" Wulfur came over, dragging a survivor for questioning. These bandits appeared from nowhere. An army of them rushed over Winterhold from the east through the ice wastes. No heraldry, no flag. "We just fended them off Whispering Town an hour ago, while the rest escaped south," Wulfur said. "Bandits? Army? Hold up, guys. These are no bandits." Alina denied. "What do you mean?" Hilda questioned, but Alina didn't need to answer. "Cuckoo!" An evil laughter came from under Hilda's feet. She moved away quickly, only to see that the sorcerer whom she just mercilessly massacred was laughing like a freak. Truthfully, Hilda was scared. What in the world?" Alina sighed, as she was already past that shock. She held the man from the head, grabbed her other sword and decapitated his head from the neck, then stuck the sword into the body. Arg! Red Witch, that's painful. The head screamed at her, causing Hilda to go even paler and Wulfur to remove his helmet in awe. How did you do that? Wulfur asked Alina. I didn't do it. These bastards are semi-eternals, and from the looks of this one, they are some sort of Daedra, heh. A human body, but it was possessed by a Daedra. I understand now. As Alina took a closer look, she was able to determine the strangeness of this sorcerer. It is almost impossible for a human to host a Daedra by normal means other than curses like vampirism and lycanthropy. However, this was something even darker. So, who is the master you spoke of? A Daedric prince who has a grudge against my husband? Alina asked. I won't answer anything, Red Witch. You can't kill me. You can't harm me. Alina's face hardened. I just purged your friends. Hee. Weaklings. They are lowly weaklings, but don't worry, my master has more powerful servants like me. If I wasn't enough, then an army of my equals will scotch this land back to ruin. So evil. Alina commented as she verified the truth with her eyes. We will have more questions for you, but let's purge the rest of your friends first, then preserve your head in a jar filled with blessed oil. Blessed oil. Blessed objects were the bane of dark creatures. Such an oil exists, and if a Daedra's head, for example, was trapped in one, it will be forever a torturous prison for the being. Alina gagged the head and gave it to Wulfur, then instantly vaporized the rest of the possessed bodies with her eyes. They finally have a prisoner they can extract information from. As they were about to move to Winterhold, a storm Atronach horse interrupted them in the way, and its rider was no other than Isha. Alina, here you are. She jumped off the Atronach. Don't worry, I am fine, Alina assured her. Good. But there is news, bad ones. Isha replied. Fort Castav was overrun by the bandits that just attacked the south. The Stormcloak commander was killed, and the survivors reported treason in the rank. You say what? Alina freaked out. That's not just it, Isha said. Vampires. Vampires were sighted assisting the bandit. This situation turned even darker on this horribly eventful day. Assassins, Daedra, bandits, and now vampires. Whoever after this has brought war to Winterhold. Alina's eyes finally showed anger she can no longer hold. She turned to the head of the Daedra and grabbed it from Wulfur. Wolf, you go to Castav. Mother, tell Father Johnrad that there are vampires. Isha, find Julliner and tell her to meet me at the college. Alina said. Why will you go to the college? Hilda asked. We need answers, and I think we all know just the person who can make the Daedra sing. Chapter 542 Battle for Winterhold 1. The True Enemy. Bring down those archers. Where are the reinforcements? This way, send them to the healers. Fort Castav was surrounded from all corners by almost 1,000 raiders. The fort's garrison, which wasn't over 200 Stormcloak soldiers, suffered heavy casualties since the morning at the hands of those murderous attackers. Actually, these raiders were no ordinary band of road robbers. They were organized fighters. Some of them can even cast a spell or two. Their archers were good, as well as they scaled the nearby mountain and rained the fort's front yard with arrows. It didn't take the whole group of raiders too long to breach the first yard and push the defenders back to the upper yard and into the keep. More to that, there were monsters in the skin of men in their rank. People who would turn into swarms of bats and corner the soldiers in the shadows, biting their necks and drawing their blood. Vampires. Shores curses you all. We can't die here too. Arg. The soldier that spoke received an arrow to his neck and fell off the wall without a sound. There was no glory in this slaughter. If Fort Castav is lost, then the safe land trade route between Winterhold and Windhelm will fall to the control of bandits. But what is going on? Why aren't the troopers of Winterhold here? The Stormcloak commander had a lot in his mind. Rather than just securing the fort, but also the lives of his men were in grave danger. This was the time to abandon their post. Send the men to the keep. Seal it behind you while I buy you time. There is a hidden door in the cellar that takes you to the northeast of this mountain. You'll find yourself near Winterhold. The commander spoke to his second. Commander, come with us. I said go. Give me a new shield and go. By your orders, Commander, Father. The young lieutenant nodded as he handed his shield to his commander, his old man. Carrying the burden of retreat on his own, the lieutenant led what was left of the remaining 100 warriors in the keep and sealed it. Meanwhile, the commander of the fort remained standing with a sword and shield blocking the arrows and slaying the raiders. Under his feet, almost 40 corpses piled up. The man surely was exhausted from the fight. He killed even more down the yard, but this was his limit. He terrified the bandits just by standing over the keep's gate and defending it like an impenetrable dam. So it is the famous hero of Eastmarch, Thane Ironbeard. Over the ranks of the raiders, a towering man holding a fearsome battle-axe walked over towards the commander. Thane Ironbeard spat at the dead bandits and raised up his shield, not even bothering to exchange words with the scum. This towering man was minimally armored, but his aura was murderous, and despite the scratches over his body, most of the blood covering him wasn't his. You aren't talking, huh? I see you are no longer buying time then. The man spoke, then looked at the sky and took in a deep breath. You smell this? The commander was about to ignore and attack the large man, but a certain smile that appeared on the face of that man made him freeze and think for a second. What? No. Yes, very yes. The leader of the bandits replied, It is the smell of blood, all right. You sent your people to escape through the caves beneath the mountain. You just didn't think we know about them. Poor you. You don't even realize that we know about every little inch around this hold. The man walked to the commander and raised his battle-axe high, going down with a mighty swing. The commander woke up from his shock in a bloody rage. He parried with the shield and countered with the sword, forcing the bandit leader to defend with the shaft of his axe. The commander then bashed with his shield once, causing the bandit leader to lose balance, then charged with the shield once again, and almost knocked down the bandit. Then with a strike of his sword, he stabbed the man at his naked torso. It should have gone in, it should have torn through every muscle and organ, but the sword tip barely grazed the skin. The bandit leader held the commander's blade and kicked him with his full might. Now that distance was made again, the bandit leader no longer wanted to have fun after this disgrace in front of his men. You vampire bastard! The commander roared. Vampire? No. The bandit leader held his axe firmly and conjured a dark power from within. The white of his eyes was slowly getting affected as it turned all black, not vampirism. The second his eyes turned black, his axe struck the commander at an unforeseeable speed. The commander's shield was shattered and his sword flew away as he defended. Disarmed, the old commander had nothing else but his fists and the shock of the unholy power that surged in his opponent. If you want to blame anyone, blame John Dare. And the axe landed on the shoulder of the commander, splitting him to the guts. Fort Castav has fallen. Tell me you know what is going on in the hold. The Jarl is running around like a headless chicken, and everyone is asking where John is. Alina spoke with a stressed face. We know a thing or two. Julliner nodded patiently. Then out with it. We have gathered information after asking the Jarl's men to raid the homes of those spy we knew of. They didn't know much, but I bought information from the Thieves' Guild and pieced everything together. And those who attacked us are not bandits but rather mercenaries. They come from Riften. Julliner said. Mercenaries? I thought those bastards are all busy with the war? Alina frowned. Yes, we thought so as well. Weird enough, those people were hired by Ulfric Stormcloak, and that's how they took a free passage to Windhelm, then took some boats a week ago and landed yesterday in Winterhold. You know the rest. And they attacked a Stormcloak fort betraying their employee. They did. We also couldn't determine which mercenary group they belonged to, as it seemed they registered themselves as various small mercenary groups to look insignificant. With the late rise of mercenary numbers, they slipped easily under everyone's noses. TSK. We became sloppy. Alina said, grinding her teeth. Even you and John can't foresee things this far. Stop blaming yourself and think of a way out of this. Julliner seemed saner ever as she said that. The two were standing under the night sky on the roof of the college to overlook the big city that is theirs. Winterhold, their dream. Alina rested her hands on the cold stone fence as she took a deep breath, thinking quietly. Slowly, Julliner came closer and rested her head on Alina's shoulder, feeling each other's warmth as their bodies stuck closer. John has been out for a month, and here we are again. Maybe we should go to bed tonight and relax together a little bit, Julliner suggested. Alina let go of her stress for a little while, and turned to Julliner, accepting her love attempt and kissing her lightly as the two of them smiled. It is a tempting idea, but let's leave that when we've fixed this mess. Now that her mind is clear, Alina kept organizing her thoughts slowly. A reckless idea came to her mind, but such ideas would save many lives. She slowly started considering it. Jull, give me a report of your investigation, she asked. I knew you'd want it. Julliner handed a few pieces of parchment to Alina, who looked at them all in one go. Many information, messy situations, a lot of blank spaces where answers should be. Still, it was a start. First, the orb which Beth called the Eye. Second, the assassin's ambush outside Sarthal. Third, the attack of the bandits who have vampires in their rank. The three events happened on the same day, and it can't be coincidental. Alina's supernatural intuition told her that much. Fate. John's last note delivered by Beth said that if she follows his instructions, she will alter her own fate to something greater, and maybe the fate of Winterhold along with her. Welcome to Team Fate, he said. Still, Beth was waiting for her in the open, without security, meaning that John knew there was a change in fate, but not necessarily how. If John knew that he endangered Beth without knowing, he wouldn't sit still and leave no stone unturned until he caught those bastards and decorated the city wall with their heads. Alina closed her eyes and focused on the wind that carries the magic of Kine. Slowly, she drifted into a dream, and time became a variable that changes based on her whims. She saw herself in Julliner's embrace, standing on the roof, from the perspective of a third person. Then she saw many other paths leading to many directions. Just like John's ability to pause the space in his head and traverse through it, Alina can do such a thing with time. John is a seeker, but she is a seer. To her, forward is the future and backward is the past, but she can't determine exactly, as there is no single clear way, and they all twirl not only to infinite futuristic possibilities, but also infinite versions of past. Only by seeking guidance from the winds of Kine could Alina become one of the best seers in this era, Crimson Moon the Red Witch. And so, she traversed time. She needed to know more, and thus she tried to look as hard as she could, but she was no Elder Scroll, or else she might have uncovered all the truths by merely a whim. She needed more mediums, information, destination. Links upon links formed a large network of thoughts in her mind as she saw the bigger picture slowly. Her red eyes moved madly as if she was looking for the axis on which all this conspiracy revolves around. Who is the enemy? That was the question she asked, and finally the answer came. A vision. Mystics like Alina are used to visions as their senses are not fully their own. Now, this vision was vivid and very much alive. She was standing on the roof of the college all alone. Just her and no one else. Not even the winds of Kine were moving as they should. The sky, it was blood. Each and every part of the horizon was just blood. She panicked but managed to remember that this is a vision even though it felt too real. Alina looked down at the city to find it back, as if it was the same thing before John arrived and fixed it, the same ruins and the same poverty, but it looked way smaller. There was smoke coming from the sea, so she ran to the other side of the college, and looked down to see the water of the Sea of Ghosts turn bloody, as well with many ships were broken and burning. Their sails were carrying the names of everyone she knew in Winterhold, but John's name was written the most. The vision didn't end here. Alina heard a lot of shouting coming from the west, and she looked over there to see as if the world shrunk, and she can see Sarthal from the top of the college. There, she saw John standing on the top of the Tower of Music, and fighting many beasts that flew in the sky. Dragons. They were too many of them for him alone to handle. He killed some of them, but he was barely keeping up on this rate. Around him were corpses of his family members, lovers, friends, even her. The situation was bleak, but suddenly, chains. They dropped down from the bloody sky and bound John firmly. He then started turning into an ugly monster. He tore apart the dragons as if they were nothing and ate them all, and then abandoned the corpses of his family and friends, walking away towards the bloody sea. The vision ended. Gasp. Alina opened her eyes wide. She was shaking too bad, and her body became colder than what can be humanly tolerated. She used too much of her life force just to see that. Alina! What the fuck? Jull panicked. Alina dropped to her knees in a pale face and a bad shape. Reaching a vision this accurate did not only put a strain on her, but it almost threatened her life. She did something humanly impossible and tempted fate for an answer. A little bit more, and she may have damned herself to oblivion. What happened? You were fine, Anne. Jull tried to question her, but Alina signaled for her to stop. Jull, listen. This is important, too important. Go find Wulfur, tell him to act quickly and secure everyone. They are after everyone. Alina said as she begged for breath. What do you mean? Jull asked. Alina's grim face turned even more dangerous. She pulled Jull closer and spoke in her ears the true identity of the enemy and their purpose, the plot she uncovered by putting too much on the line. The identity of the true enemy. Chapter 543 Battle for Winterhold 2 Wulfur Strikes Back. Yesterday was an exhausting day for Alina. Not only did she have to fight twice, but she even drained a large chunk of her own vitality as a price for divining the truth behind what is happening in Winterhold. Alina's divination filled many gaps and answered many questions, so she shared those answers with only Jull and Wulfur, the only two who can be trusted at the moment. Even John must not know, especially John must never know. As Alina soundly slept in her bed while Ela was watching over her, Jull closed the door of the room and dismissed the rest of the people. Alina needed some quiet, or that was the excuse. The only one who stayed with Jull was Wulfur. She already shared with him what Alina told her, and his face was dark with worry. Such a thing, it can't be true. No, we must not allow it to be true, Wulfur said as he squeezed a tankard with his bare hand from the frustration. It won't be true, Jull confirmed him. He looked at her and his eyes showed anger that was never seen on him before. He is never angry, but the thought of what Alina passed to him was eating him from the inside. Let's face it. We all know John and how he thinks. You of all people have been with him since childhood. What do you know? The John I know never crosses his lines. You were nothing but a mere killer when he found you, so don't ever think. Wulfur lashed at Jull with an annoyed face, but stopped the moment he knew that he crossed the line. Her face twisted in anger, but somehow, she managed to remain calm and held herself. You are right. I was nothing, but now I am something. And if you are so knowledgeable about John's lines, you tell me what they are. You are his brother, all right, but it is I who serve his darkness, and that's a depth you will never know, Wulfur. She said with a solemn look in her eyes, Now tell me, What are his lines? Jullunr retorted to him. Wulfur wanted to answer her, but his anger didn't get his thoughts straight, and he chose to remain silent. We are those lines. I know what Alina said got to you more than anyone, but the real enemy has realized our weakness. So, for the time being, we have fate to serve and people to murder. It was hard for Wulfur to accept the words of a lunatic like Jullunr this easily, but he knew she was right. As he gradually calmed down, he nodded and apologized for what he said. I am sorry. Don't be a softy. I wasn't even offended. She looked away from him as she was clearly offended, so he changed the subject. It is almost dawn. We have to move towards Castav. Naturally. The boss is away and the lady is unable to lead. Should we call the Jarl? He asked. Bah. You are the only one with a title like them. They call you the chief for crying out loud. Yeah, that makes me the third in command, right? He asked. She dubiously looked at him. Took you 5 years to figure that one out? She asked. I guess. Wulfur didn't want to go head-butting with Jullunr again, and so he sat simply just waiting. What will you be doing when the group moves? He asked. I am staying, she said. You are the offense. I will stay here and watch over the city. Uncle Jonrad will accompany you, so you have more than what you need to drive those fuckers out of Castav. It wouldn't be a problem. He nodded, and... What? Nothing. I just wanted to ask if John has also given you some notes telling you to do stuff, he said. Both of us as well as Alina. Alina operates here. I operate in Riften with the thieves and you in Whiterun with the companions. But he said there is a fourth fate. We are clearly 3. Well, don't ask me. As far as I am concerned, John didn't have that one fully planned out just yet. She shrugged her shoulders. Wulfur nodded with a hum as he rested his hand on his hammer's shaft. And what hunt did he send you on? He asked. Me? Clearly not as much as you. She said as she gazed at the hammer he has. I got a new bow. Jullunr walked inside the armory and returned with a terrifying-looking bow that made Wulfur have a strange look with his face. That's Daedric, right? Ruin's Edge it is called. She nodded. It's a bow, not a blade. Why call it an edge? 'Cause it's edgy. Jull made a wild guess, then pointed at the side of the bow. Look, there's even an eye. A living eye on the bow that makes its arrow chase the target no matter where it runs. You edgy indeed. Wulfur felt bad for whoever used to own that actual living moving eye on the bow, who made this monstrosity. It was made in the Shivering Isles by the Mascan Dark Seducers. John told me it was with a crazy bandit leader in Eastmark. I traveled there, killed the bandits, faced their leader in a legendary battle where I was actually racing arrows, and killed the guy in a cheese-eating contest. I won't try to figure out how it escalated that way, Wulfur said. Rune's Edge, Daedric Ebony Bow. Random effect. Homing arrows. What about you? She asked. Me? John sent me to Riften to meet up with some orc clan that was being attacked by giant. He said. Interesting. Turns out the leader of the orcs was a craven and Malakath cursed him, so I acted as a champion for the clan and redeemed them to Malakath after killing the giant's leader, and the orc leader as well. Malakath rewarded me with this hammer, the hammer that an entire nation was named after. He pointed to the war hammer he is leaning on. Hammer fell? So this is it. Volendrung? Yes, Volendrung. The great hammer of the Dwemer clan Rorken, which was claimed by Malakath after the disappearance of all Dwemer. Volendrung, Daedric Dwemer Warhammer. Absorb stamina. Paralysis. Disintegrate. It looks evil, Jullunr commented. Wulfur silently pointed back at her bow. Well, that wasn't the end, and actually, the second part of the journey was illuminating. Do tell. I met an Argonian woman going mad over a Dwemer lexicon that she possessed, or rather, it possessed her. Either way, she wanted to get rid of it and hired me to do so. Thankfully, John advised me to contact our excavation team beforehand and make them ready for a large Dwemer ruin exploration. This ended with us in the ruins of the Dwemer city of Avanshenzl. This place was out of the world. It took us a full week to follow it up, and the lexicon showed me ghosts of the ones that stole it from its place until I reached the deepest vault. There, I placed the lexicon on its pedestal and managed to delve into its memories. And Wulfur remained silent for a while before grinning. I inherited Dwemer knowledge, lots of it. Julliner raised her brows. You're too tall to be a dwarf. You're right, but I still got it. So, where did the dwarves go? You at least know that, right? And not that kind of knowledge, Wulfur said apologetically. TSK. I thought it was something fun. What are you talking about? I gained knowledge of Dwemer contraptions, steam technology, machinery, and Dwemer metal processing. Even that scholar from Markarth that would jack everyone off for their Dwemer artifacts would kill for what I have. He retorted. I said it is not fun. You boys get too excited for weird stuff. Sighed whatever. I at least rose up a couple of ranks at the Thieves' Guild, she said and looked at Wulfur. Yeah. I almost punched a companion for calling me whelp, he said with shame. She grinned at his situation. Wulfur is famous around the warriors of Skyrim, but he still had to start from the bottom with the companions. She, on the other hand, had a good relationship with the guild, and managed to raise her rank. She uses the false name Sparrow in the guild, but the only ones who know her real identity are Delvin Mallory and Brynjolf. John didn't want her to catch the attention of the guild master, Mercer Fry. Wulfur and Julliner chatted for a bit until someone knocked on the door and walked it. Hrothgar, are we ready? Yes, Chief. 500 dare troopers on their horses are waiting outside Winterhold. We will be joined by 500 guardsmen at Whispering Town and a force of 1,000 Stormcloak soldiers coming from Eastmarch. The clans will also send their men. Good. Let's move out. Wulfur nodded and followed Hrothgar before he stopped and turned to Julliner. I am sorry about what I said once again. Don't worry about it. I will tell John definitely. Great. I trust he will say brothers before hoes. Fine, I'll tell your wife. From Winterhold to Fort Castav, that was a long journey as Wulfur and the dare troopers were racing on their horses to get past Whispering Town before first light. The raiders or the mercenaries or whatever would surely expect retaliation, but what they are not expecting is Alina being on to their plans. Now that Wulfur knows the objective of those evildoers, he was going to play a powerful reverse card on them and wreak havoc in their ranks. They met with Jonrad Firemane in Whispering Town, and were joined by a band of firemans and moonblades on Flame Horse Atronak. Wulfur was riding a large bear Atronak, which gave him the airs of a war chief. Soon, they were but a mile away from the fort when Wulfur noticed a few wolves circling a man lying in the snow. They seemed to have not preyed on him yet, so Wulfur signaled the army to continue without him and chased the wolves away. He didn't suspect to feel some life force from the lying man, but to think that he was actually alive. Over here, send a healer. Wulfur called, and the healer arrived to rescue the man. He happened to be a Stormcloak officer and the last of his attachment. He said the two words, cave and vampires, and much else, then he passed out afterwards. But to think that the whole garrison was annihilated. The one who was assigned to Fort Castav was Thane Ironbeard from Eastmarch, a well-known warrior who was a veteran from the Great War. Wulfur returned to the lead and went with the army until they could see the pillars of smoke up above Castav. There, Wulfur decided to strategize and take all the available routes to the fort. Jonrad Firemane took the direction of the mountain to find the caves along with a band of experienced fighters, and Wulfur took the other three routes. Over the mountain back, through the wooden palisade wall and far across the fort wall from the other side to prevent the enemies from escaping. It was a good plan, but way too good to be done in less than a few minutes. Why? Less than 100 enemies were present in the fort, and they resisted and fought to their demise, but the evildoers summoned many undead from the fallen Stormcloaks. There were no vampires or anyone else in the caves either. On the other hand, Wulfur and some battle mages didn't participate in the assault. They spread widely all across the fort looking for barrels and crates that didn't look too suspicious. Once they found a mound of them in the upper yard of the fort, Wulfur used a grand freeze scroll on these containers and carefully started dismantling them. Fire salts mixtures, highly unstable and would explode right away if they were moved violently. A mage from the trooper analyzed the components of the crate. Keep them frozen. Transport what you can away from the populace and bury them in the snow. This amount of fire salts will certainly be useful, Wulfur said. Fire salts are some rare alchemy ingredients that can only be harvested by hunting fire Daedra. That amount of fire salts is by no means anything to laugh at. It also can be mixed with other alchemy ingredients to create a highly unstable mixture that can be used in making explosives, but the recipe itself is abnormally advanced and with a low success rate. From what Wulfur can tell, this amount of fire salt explosives were meant to target the whole force of Winterhold. If not for Alina's warning, avoiding such a thing would have required an abnormal amount of luck. But the question remains, where are the rest of the attackers? They surely should have stayed close to watch the explosion annihilate the men of Winterhold firsthand. With that in mind, the search started and Jonrad Firemane found traces on a nearby mountain. As he told Wulfur, a scout came from the nearby road which led west, shouting that the bandits were attacking Nightgate village. "It's a trap," Hrothgar Firemane said. "Why are you saying it like it is a joyous occasion?" Wulfur asked. "It's a John impression. He always says it with a delighted face. Believe me, you don't want to know what comes to John's mind when he says it," Wulfur assured him. Mirren sneezes badly back in Winterhold. "It is still a trap, though." Vladimir Firemane cut their laugh. "I know. We still ought to welcome it head-on," Wulfur said. "They have to act or the village will suffer the same fate as the fort." With that, a band of 300 dare chargers sped through the snowy road led by Wulfur towards Nightgate. The rest of the army followed, and Vladimir Firemane summoned a flame-hawk Atronach and scouted the sky from up ahead. The situation near Nightgate was still escalating. Almost 400 raiders were starting to burn, pillage and loot the village, but they met the superior force of the dare chargers. Wulfur, who led the attack against the raiders, was driving through them on his bear Atronach, as Volendrung in his hand was claiming lives and damning them to Malakath. The people of the village escaped behind the coming rescuers, and a skirmish occurred in the middle of the village. There where Wulfur met the first sighting of the vampires among the raiders. Wulfur didn't even face a problem against vampires. He is a user of the holy aura and he is insanely armored. It was safe to say that his hammer battered through mortals and vampires alike, turning the men into mush and the monsters into dust. Still, there was another problem. "They were preparing something for us," Wulfur said as he stood in the middle of the village's square. Around him, many soldiers were fuming with anger as they rounded up all the remaining raider captives and put whoever survived their leaders in chains. Before they arrived, the raiders seemed to have killed the dare troopers and the guards that were stationed in the village and crucified them for display in order to break the morale of the soldiers who supposedly survived the blast in Fort Castav. A rapid situation of interrogation and executions happened afterward. Those who don't give out information were beheaded on the spot, and from the surviving raiders, a handful few barely said anything under torture. It was strange, as most of them wouldn't even speak or say anything, not out of loyalty, as there is no honor among thieves. They were rather driven by fear. Now what could make men like those raiders follow vampires to raids? There were vampire thralls, all right, but these men were silent, as if death is something they would simply welcome from the fear of what comes. When a dare trooper roared at the one he was holding if he was not afraid not to go to Sovngarde when he gets slaughtered like sheep, the captive merely laughed and said that what awaits in Sovngarde is nothing but pain and fear for the faithless. There when Wulfurs understood what kind of people they were up against. Nords hardly lose faith in Sovngarde, no matter what, but the truth that Sovngarde is haunted at the moment is only known to a very closed circle of people around John. The only outsiders that may know of this are the dragons and supposedly their followers. But saying that those raiders are dragon cult is too short-sighted. There are forces more at play rather than a dragon cult here, and they were driven by a mastermind. Someone who carefully picked every enemy that was ever wronged by John or Winterhold. Bandits, pirates, Daedra, vampires, worm cultists, dragon cultists, old enemies, clan remnants, criminals, spies, they all banded together rather harmonically under the banner of dread and fear. That's enough. Take no prisoners. Wulfur ordered the raiders all dead. The bodies of the raiders were piled and burnt at the end of the first day. By the second day, news reached that the raiders were attacking Fort Fellhammer occupied by Stormcloaks on the other edge of the hold. The garrison there should be stronger than Castav as it is close to the frontier, Wulfur said. You are not reading the situation right. They want us to rush after them. Jonrad corrected Wulfur. Right. But that means, they want us to take the short route up on Wayward Pass, but an ambush? Wulfur asked. It is obvious, but it would give them a great advantage. We would be forced to take it either way since we don't want them to attack us from the back or expose the Nightgate village to them again. So we walk into the ambush willingly. They expect us to be worn out, because of the trap they laid to us in Castav and the fight here. I say we ambush them at the Wayward Pass before they discover how fast we are moving. Jonrad's suggestion took wide approval. The man himself is an expert when it comes to ambushes and acting in unexpected ways. An hour later, the army was organized to split into two groups, one to the west through the Pale under Stormcloak leadership, and the other to the north to confront the ambushers. Meanwhile in Winterhold, Julliner was sitting on the roof of the Sea Mist Manor playing on her flute alone. Alina was still resting and Ela was patrolling the streets on her own. The city was as silent as a grave and every business in town was temporarily shut. It all began when the horn was blown 3 times indicating an emergency situation in the city, then the eerie sound of Julliner's flute, carried by the gentle air. There were visitors in Winterhold, not the welcomed kind of visitors, but they appeared across the shadows indicating their dominance when the fight is far from sunlight. Silently and rapidly, 8-legged creatures crawled in the shadows and watched those figures as they slowly headed towards the manor. The music of the flute went down and went up slowly, then extended widely with a sweet tone before turning into beats and rattles as if Julliner was speaking a language rather than playing an instrument. And the spiders leapt on the head of the thralls of those vampires. And Ela the werewolf moved. And every dare agent jumped out of their hiding spots. And so it begins. Chapter 544 Battle for Winterhold 3. Victorious, guess who's back? Back again. At Waterun Gemechua is back. Estir again. Guess who's back, 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 Nanana. Also, if any of you play for honor, my name is Don_Dokmasi and I am quite the noob who plays on PC. The advantage of information in war is basically the most important of all. If you know where the enemy is coming from, you will ambush them. If you know where and how the enemy will ambush you, you will counter that ambush and turn the tables. Surprisingly, those two situations happened almost at the same time. Wayward Pass and Winterhold were currently under attack by that mysterious enemy. In Winterhold, it was almost the same assassins who attacked when he arrived for the first time. Of all the goals to aim at, they were fixed on reaching John's house and kidnap Alina. Why her? Alina could make a rough guess herself, but the ultimate goal is to get to John. This enemy is not some dragon cult seeking to attack the warlord who supports the Dragonborn or any of the matter. This was an act of revenge against John himself. The blood in Alina's dream meant either war or blood oath, and not surprisingly, it was both. The enemy operatives were many and skilled enough to enter the city undetected. Still, once inside the city, a bloodbath awaited them, and it was made of cold steel and venomous fangs. Around the manor, there were enough Dare agents from Team 0 to give a Daedric prince a hard time going past them. Around the city in the dark alleyways, many spiders heeded the call of Julliner's flute and crawled from the sewers and the hidden areas. An arrow flew towards her throat with a terrifying precision, but a sudden flash appeared around her and sent the arrow away. The assassin who shot the arrow suddenly stopped moving as something caught him by the face and a stinger struck his skull. The Daedra inhabiting the man wailed and faded back to oblivion as the stinger reached the center of the brain, and suddenly the man turned to his companions with a large spider on his face. Even if they were inhabited by Daedra, what they saw was a thing from the nightmares. They wanted to deal with it silently, but as soon as they tried to cut the spider with their companion's head, he jumped on their swords in a freakish way and traded the arm of his companion with his life. The mind-controlling spider jumped off the man's body and attempted to take one of his companions, but the target struggled badly and stabbed himself with the spider on his face. One remained on this team, and he was already too terrified to go forward, but the Daedra inside him hated the feeling of mortal weakness and fear, so he didn't give the man the chance to retreat and plainly forced him to jump off the high point, running madly towards the Sea Mist Manor for an arrow to silently strike his eye. Almost all the agents of Team 0 shook their heads, seeing how messy their enemies are. They may have been possessed by something powerful, but a power gained without effort is a danger to its user rather than the opponent. They prided themselves to be the best at what they do. Still, those enemies are a far cry compared to the ones that faced Alina in Sarthal. They can't even resurrect themselves when they die. They heard during the mission briefing that this may be related to the Daedra inhabiting the host, but this scene was just pathetic. The scene repeated itself with many different spiders afterward. Spiders that can explode in poison clouds, spiders that can freeze their surroundings, large spiders that can bite armor, spiders that smell so bad as if the rotten flesh and touching them burns the skin. From the looks of it, Julliner has taken her liberty with the experiments on her spider pets. Trash. All trash. But of course, not all the enemies were those cannon fodder. The plan of the attackers was to lure out the security detail around John's house, and then seriously attack them, but this thing about running into spiders was simply too infuriating. Weak and feeble beings were able to wipe out almost 100 Daedra thralls, the amount that is by no means easy to just make. He finally gave a signal, and the real force behind him moved openly. It wasn't only stealthy assassins this time, but also creatures of the night, as well as undead and summoned Daedra. It must have taken them quite a long time and a lot of resources to sneak each and every one of those people inside the hold without anyone noticing, but that isn't what was important. The fact that these people were attacking during daybreak meant they were having some sort of plan. Was it to expose the whole ability of Winterhold's best defenders, or draw them all out, or were they being arrogant? Julliner didn't think of it much now as the enemy was moving, but she could feel the murderous intent they harbored. The enemies charged towards the Sea Mist Manor from the south, east and north like hungry beasts. Julliner finally decided to jump off the roof and meet the enemies head-on, but as she landed on her feet, she quickly turned tail and ran away from the scene. Soldiers do not abandon their posts this easily, and there was no way that Julliner, the one who was a literal pain to the cult's operatives, to retreat like that unless. From the sides of the scene, Multiple canisters rolled on the ground, catching the attention of the attackers, and by the next second, flash, flash, boom. The grenades exploded one after the other, blinding those who can be blinded and causing a sun damage to the undead. The solar grenades were designed specifically to deal with vampires and undead, while a small number of grenades were silver frag grenades that would harm werewolves and vampires. This was merely the beginning, as all the houses around the Sea Mist Manor were literally packed with agents dressed as dare troopers. They all opened the windows and scaled the walls nearby, aiming their crossbows at the attackers. Fire! It was so foolish for the attackers to think that as long as they are inside Winterhold, no one other than the powerful figures would stand in their way. They simply had numbers and would use that to distract people like Julliner or Hilda to try to get to Alina. But not only did the powerful figures not appear, the defenders of Winterhold were already onto their plan and readied the perfect counterattack. But did any of that matter? Hardly. The attackers came with the intention of sacrificing as many as they could, as long as they can harm John's people and kidnap his wife. They intended to deliver the most devastating blow of humiliation to John, who is their most hated antagonist. What followed was just pure mayhem. The necromancers commanding the undead cast corpse explosion on their fallen comrades, who were close to the defenders, attempting to injure as many as they could. Reinforcements that were hidden nearby joined the attackers and tried to scale the walls and enter the houses, but tink, tink, tink. Bear traps. They were everywhere, hidden by illusion magic, but not just that. Boom, boom, boom. They were exploding bear traps, as if the original function wasn't terrifying enough. Frost runes, solar grenades, exploding bear traps, shooting from windows. It was as if the defenders of Winterhold were not a legit army, but rather a band of thugs. In truth, the Dare troopers were trained in both urban and open field situations, making them a deadly force that individually increase in power the more they join each other, and the Dare agents are elites among the troopers. Their astonishing coordination befitted the most powerful force in the north. The attackers still kept the strategy of numbers, and while many would think it wouldn't work, it was actually working. They managed to push the defenders by a block and adapted to the traps and their pattern. Hiya! Kill them all! Yet from the back, an unexpected defense strategy showed itself. The Dare troopers, with a band of firemen and moonblades led by Hilda Firemane, assaulted the attackers from the back, even with their number and mobility disadvantage. Hilda was as towering as ever, holding an axe that is as tall as her, and swinging it around, dyeing the background in blood. Her frenzy kicked in the moment she saw enough blood, and kept brutalizing the enemies on a pace of her own, while the rest followed her momentum. This woman is truly brutal, worthy of the name Bloody Hilda. Even with her late experience with motherhood, and becoming more docile now that she settled in Winterhold, old habits seemed to die hard, seeing her turning the enemies into pieces of artistic gore. Raider excursions. Her destructive power alone wasn't enough, sadly. The enemies could easily escape from her or try to attack her from behind, but at this moment, another figure showed up in the Shalader Plaza. Holding a spear and fighting like a machine, Isha came down from her house with a feral anger, killing and chasing every enemy she saw. Bothia! Isha shouted to the Daedra, and in the frozen heart of Skyrim, the hot winds of the Sahara were summoned, conjuring a sand storm that blinds the enemies. The number of monster-class warriors in Winterhold was not something anyone would expect. Isha, Mirren and Miranda are strangers and never showed up that often, so they were completely an unwelcome surprise. The Dare troopers are known to be powerful in the field, but not as agile as cats, reminding the attackers of the black pigeons who snoop around them. Even the firemen and their beasts were present, and the younger generation members showed a shocking potential. The fight reached its climax with the two parties at each other's throat. The normal residents of Winterhold were evacuated to the other districts of the city, where it is safe, and the Jarl even showed up in a squad of his guardsmen and blocked the roads. When the attackers wanted to use any house's residents as hostages, they would find out that a band of dare troopers or some firemen were waiting for them inside. How were these people this ready? The leader of the attackers never knew. The plan which was put down to him by his leader, the one called Thalmor, is now gone, and only death awaits his band if they stay further. They can still retreat, they very much can. Reluctant and bitter, he called for a retreat, but in his heart he believed that one day those cocky people of Winterhold will no return to their place once they see true fear. They will shiver in dread when the heads of the firemen and the dares are hung on spikes and displayed on the walls and roofs. This day will be the day when the true owners of Winterhold return. He turned to the sky and roared for Winterhold to hear. Mark my words, Winterhold. Your cities will be purged, your homes will be burnt, your men will be slaughtered, your children will be thrown in the sea, your women shall be our plaything. One day we will return and purge this filthy land under blood and sail. Clan blood sail will never die. He said his piece with all the hate in the world. He was satisfied once the fight stopped after hearing him. He grinned and took out a teleportation scroll to retreat away. But a beautiful woman appeared. And when a woman this beautiful appears, he realizes that whatever he ranted just now wasn't what made the fight stop, but was her who made the hearts of the men and women skip a beat. She is as beautiful as the word beautiful can get. She is tall, dignified, and carries the air of the noblest person anyone came across. A lady. No, the lady. Winterhold's queen, the Red Witch of the Crimson Moon, Alina Dare. Her head was crowned by an actual crown made of mithril, and she held on a staff. Both the crown and the staff were items of great power. The attackers knew what to do to this woman, who simply walked out of her house's front door. Catch her. Hold her. Aim the teleportation scrolls towards her and send her with them. She is the target thereafter. John Dare's weakness. Alina looked at them with absolute abhorrence, even with them being creatures of the night and Daedra worshippers. The look in her eyes caught them from inside and stripped them from any chance of redemption. There is no going back or any sort of salvation for their souls after they were stripped away of any form of divine mercy just by angering that woman. She is Kain's favored, Kain who carries the souls to the afterlife. Now Kain will no longer carry them. It is a fate they signed up for when they damned their own souls, but now their damnation has become eternal. They knew it all, but they could no longer hesitate. She has to be taken no matter what divine they anger or what curse they conjure. They stepped towards her, she sighed. You dare? She spoke. Dare? An infuriating word indeed. They wanted to curse that name that rendered their clan to ruin, but Alina's wrath came swifter. She is indeed weakened. She has spent a lot of her vitality to uncover their plans by looking into time. She put her life at risk so that she can corner them in a moment like this. Corner them? Yes. She alone was holding their lives in her very hands. She didn't use a staff or a circlet to cast magic. In fact, she didn't even use magic. She didn't unsheath her deadly blades. She was just standing in her home clothes, covered by a fur cloak that added dignity to her appearance, and in her free hand, she held a control tablet, one of those light screens made by John. She tapped on the screen and images appeared, then added a few taps and swiped across the screen before adding one final tap. No one knew what sort of madness she just did, but soon after, they learned of what kind of horror she called upon. She smirked in mockery. Now look what you made me do. Once the firemen's and dare troopers. Basically, once everyone from Winterhold saw what just happened, they abandoned their posts and ran away without even looking back. Ominous? Not even close. Mechanical sounds were heard from all across the city as random pillars and structures started to transform, as if it was a Dwemer ruin or a clockwork machine. The next thing seen was these structures opening up and strange-looking pillars appearing in their stead with orbs on them. Bzzzt, bzzzt. Alina simply turned around as every attacker around the city was now under the mercy of the Tesla Tower's defense system. That's right, John equipped the inner city with a secret tower defense system connected directly to his control panel. Like, if he can do it, why not? Wayward Pass was about to descend to the same havoc as Winterhold. Only difference is, the defenders of Winterhold were the ones on the offense in this situation, and what a sight it was. First, a large man walked towards Wayward Pass alone, holding nothing but a katana blade. He stood in the middle of the roads, detecting all the presence around him and slowly unsheathing the blade. It was weird for the ambushers stationed on the path, as they expected an army to pass by. They were readying their arrows, traps and large rolling rocks to completely decimate the dare troopers, but for only one man to show up, and not just any man, it was the King of Ashes himself. The ambushers consisted of many fallen clans that were destroyed by John Dare, the Firemans and their allies. They knew who Jonrad Firemane is and knew very well the danger of facing a Dragon Knight. He is now standing in the middle of their trap at the highest point of Wayward Pass, next to the altar of Arche, and every arrow and blade were pointed at him. Still, it rather felt like they were the ones who were being ambushed. It was a whoever moves first dies first sort of situation. Jonrad was calm, very calm. He looked like an aged version of his son with a larger beard and sleepier face, but the same domineer was there when the two are about to do something reckless. His killing intent was dense, and combined with his scorching flames, he slowly let out his aura with a mere hum instead of crying a ki. A manifestation, the highest form of aura. At first, Jonrad's aura was elemental, a flaming aura. It then showed its advanced form affecting the earth beneath him into lava. Finally, ash spread from the molten earth under his feet and enveloped the area around him with what could be seen as clouds forming an image of a man whose eyes were flaming red holding countless blades. The King of Ash. The illusion manifesting around Jonrad was his battle spirit, his uniqueness as a warrior and his character as a man. This manifesting illusion was the highest mastery an aura master can reach, in Jonrad has a place secured in the list of those who can manipulate their surroundings with their breath and aura. Attack! There was no longer a leeway from confronting this monster. A signal was given for the attack, and all the ambushers showed themselves and their traps, but suddenly, poof! Jonrad disappeared as if he wasn't there to begin with. "Surrender or none of you will walk out of here alive." A shout came from up the mountain as the ambushers suddenly discovered that they were surrounded. It was hard to imagine how this happened, but Jonrad seemed to have never been on Wayward Pass to begin with. He was still down the mountain but simply used a stealth technique to copy his aura into something that exactly resembles him and gave it some of his power to induce his aura in the surroundings. The former spy was not just good at hiding his presence, but also at creating living mirages and distractions to make the enemy fall into their own trap. While his aura mirage distracted the ambushers, Wulfur and Dare troopers scaled the mountain for high ground advantage, and reinforcements arrived from Sarthal. What happened next was more of a desperate defense rather than an ambush. At the back of the troopers, Jonrad had a light screen that he used to send a request for reinforcements, and it also carried instructions from Alina. It seemed that Winterhold City was secured, and all that was left were the ambushers here, and at the ones attacking Fort Fellhammer. During the fight, Jonrad observed Wulfur, who fought a large man possessed by a Daedra, seemingly the leader of the whole attacker force. With the people here finally getting slaughtered and imprisoned by the troopers, Winterhold emerged victorious against the force that wanted to lay waste to its safety. Or so they thought. Of course, things can't just be sunshine and rainbows. The Bloodsails clan, the clan which plagued Winterhold for years with their blood Hrothgar's pirates, seemed to have survived the pirate purge at the hands of John Dare 3 years ago. Not only that, but they also combined their forces with the enemies of Winterhold and the Firemans. They were working for the dragon cult, and they were hell-bent on revenge. When they were all defeated, when their forces in Winterhold and Wayward Pass were destroyed, they didn't give up and called for their endgame card. From a lonely mountain, one man stood on its peak and cried to the sky. His shout was heard not as like Thursdayum, but it had an echo to it, and it caused those who heard it to shiver in fear. What replied to such a grim cry was a roar, a thundering roar that almost split the heavens. The skies were covered by two massive wings as a terrifying creature circled around Sarthal. A dragon. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.